Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Today is May 3rd, 2022. This is the recording for Level 2, Lesson 10. I will tell you, and if I look off to my notes a lot, I have a lot to get through. This is an incredibly important teaching today. And let me also make sure that I've got my little trackpad for being able to draw, because I'm going to be doing a lot of drawings. I actually almost decided to skip this lesson because remember, I recorded a lot of these almost 10 years ago at this point in 2013, 2014. And as I was going back into it, I was like, not sure if this is still relevant. I'm so happy that I did not decide to skip over it because it is absolutely relevant and important to what we are experiencing right now in terms of all of our planetary ascension and every other thing that directly affects your life. Hold on a second, I'm just closing out a bunch of other programs if I seem moderately distracted. So important to everything that we're closing out. So the name, it is Lesson 10 of Level 2, the Advanced Material. The name of the lesson is The Sun's Senses and the Human Endocannabinoid System. And I was thinking, I don't know if the stuff about the endocannabinoid system is so very relevant to our journey, but all of this is about those stuck energies on the interstices, or the pooties, or whatever we want to call them, those pesky occupiers of the interstices. As you can tell, I'm playing with my lighting, just trying to get my face illuminated because there's a lot of the sun coming in through the side window over there. So it is absolutely essential for me to do this. So I'm sharing it all with you, including the idea of the endocannabinoid system. So first of all, the sun and the heliosphere, the electromagnetic envelope that is surrounding the entire solar system. So just let me grab my sculpture. And yes, I'm going to talk fast today. So yes, be prepared. This is, of course, a shape of one of our chakras. You can see also the energy field that's in the painting behind me. This is the shape also of Earth's magnetosphere. So you have you with your personal energy field around you. Then you have the planet with the planetary energy field around the planet. It is called the magnetosphere. It is an electromagnetic envelope around our planet that exists within a much, much larger fractal macrocosm, which is called the heliosphere. The sun is a giant, massive level of consciousness and energy, and it creates a very, very giant, big electromagnetic bubble that it lives within. It's not just a physical electromagnetic bubble, it is also a consciousness electromagnetic bubble. We live within the mind or the consciousness or the dream of the sun as an emanator of possibilities and realities. What comes off of the sun is more than mere light. It is timelines, possibilities, probabilities, and pure consciousness. So consciousness emanates from the sun. Training to think of the sun in a new way, more than the way objective science looks at and has prepared you to think of the sun. This is big. Let's draw a little picture of the sun as I begin to illustrate what I'm talking about. So here is the sun. And then, hi, Aaron, good to see you. I'll change actually this little thumbnail. Light emanates from the sun. And so here's like a curly light wave. But if you understand, this is coming from a sphere all the way around the sun, and it extends endlessly in every direction. So we have arrows of light that extend outward endlessly in every direction from the sun as an emanator. And that light is consciousness. And that light is also feelers. They are sensory organs. Every little speck of light that emanates outward from the spherical presence of the sun is a feeler that is going outward. The amazing thing about light is that if it doesn't interact with anything, that means that if that particle or waveform of light doesn't actually interact with a planet, an asteroid, a person, anything, it just continues endlessly. Infinity. Got it? This is really, really big and really profound stuff. The idea that the sun is like a brain or a central piece of neurology that is in the sky, and it is sending off thoughts. And that if those thoughts do not interact with anything, they just keep going out there, off in their directions infinitely. That is very big. But consciousness on that level, you would say is unidirectional, one direction. It comes from the sun and goes outward, out there, but that's only if it doesn't interact with something. If it interacts with something, if it is absorbed by something, light is absorbed, light bounces off, and light also returns back. This whole teaching is about biofeedback loops. Topic, starting right here at the beginning, because it's going to be a long recording. I'm going to talk fast, but just remember, we are all looping back. All of this is about the sun as an emanator of consciousness that all loops back. What are the blockages and the impediments? What is blocking out the signals? What is our experience? How does that have an impact on our individual life? And also the source, or what we'd say is divine consciousness, God consciousness, that is sending out energy emanations, which are all looping back. So this is where I talk about this. Consciousness is actually not unidirectional, it is bidirectional. It both is sent out from the sun or out from the source, and also returns back to the sun and back to the source. So that's in a healthy body. We have this oscillation of sending out and bouncing back. You could think about it in your own body, signals being sent from your brain to your peripherals, to your hands and your fingers and your extremities of your body. And then these parts of your body here, like your fingers and your toes, feeling things in the world, and then on a different neural pathway, sending those signals back to your brain so that your brain and your perception can then say, aha, I feel and see and sense what is going on in my environment. So the sun is doing this with light in order to sense its environment. This is where I teach about this thing that I've said many times in class at this point, but this is the introduction in this particular lesson. A fun experiment is anytime that I say the word light, you can replace the word light for consciousness. So the sun is using light as its feelers in its extremities to send out to its fingers and toes and see what is going on in the environment around it and have those signals bounce back. Let's also replace the sun is sending out consciousness from itself as a brain, as a thinker, outward into the world, having experiences with those consciousnesses, and then having them reflected back to the emanator. The source is also the destination, in order to receive a sensory picture or sensory description of what the world is. Similar to fiber optic cables that carry data in a computer, light carries information. So light equals consciousness, light equals data or information. And that's more on the sense of like a dry analytical computer sense, because you are, of course, like more than just a computer, more than just information, but you are here gathering information in your life. If you ever ask big existential questions, why am I here? Part of it is, the answer is, I am a sensory organ as a light being of the larger light being network, which is the sun and the stars. And I am here on an information gathering journey. And my job is to sense the world around me and send that back to the sun and the stars, and to give an accurate picture of what I'm experiencing as one small fractal element of this larger piece. When you turn on the light in a room, you have access to more information than you did before you turned on the light. This is also how light carries information. In a dark room in the physical world that we're talking about, a physical light, when there's no light, you're like, I can't see anything. I cannot sense my experience. Of course, I'm focusing all of this on the world of sighted people. So please, if you are not sighted, or if your eyes work differently, please understand that that's where I'm coming from in this description. And I validate also your perception of how you experience the world. And we'll talk about echolocation soon. But when you turn on the light in a darkened room, you are then able to receive more information about your environment. This is what the sun is doing, and the sun needs to get information about its environment in time. We're talking about illuminating the room of time to tell what is going on. Big, big, big. The sun is sending out light to the room of the galaxy, along with all the rest of the stars. So the sun doesn't just illuminate us and our little space. All of the stars are sending out light. The sun is the nearest one to us. All of these points of light and points of consciousness are sending out thought forms, consciousness, and intelligence in order to illuminate the room of the galaxy. And there are many, many galaxies. And what is being illuminated or explored is literally time. Now, I talk about the sun also as being our nearest, closest relative, and we are fed, nourished, upheld, and affected by all of the stars and light and consciousness. So again, the sun feeds us, gives us consciousness, like the ability to think, uplifts us, moves us through time, gives us possibilities or timelines to actually travel upon. And the sun is not our only parent or relative of light. We have, think of how many stars there are in the sky, an amazing number of stars in the sky. Sorry, I cannot take that phone call right now. Now I have to jump to the human endocannabinoid system. Aurora, what are you talking about? You're talking about pot. Like, this is why I was like, I don't know if this is the right topic, but it absolutely is relevant. So yes, I'm talking about cannabis, but I'm talking about it in probably a completely different way than you might be familiar with. Let me first write something that is the word endocannabinoid. Great. So now you know how it is spelled. The endocannabinoid system. Endo is the prefix meaning within, and cannabinoid meaning cannabis. So although many people know of cannabis as a recreational drug, it is also a wonderful healing substance, and I'm a huge advocate for it. There is an aspect within your own body that is a naturally occurring system of cellular communication devices and neurotransmitters meaning chemicals that help nerve to nerve communication within your body that is naturally occurring. Humans, many other animals, and so humans, cats, dogs, lots of mammalian animals have what is known as an endocannabinoid system. Endo, naturally occurring. You have these chemicals naturally within your body. Let me talk about where two nerves come together and what this is all about. But basically, throughout recent modern history, like the past 100 or 150 years, the human endocannabinoid system has been suppressed because the building blocks for these neurotransmitters have been systemically filtered out of our food system. So you need to have building blocks, just like protein is building blocks for protein in your body, right? But in order for you to have these naturally occurring cannabinoids, you need to have the building blocks, which are these certain types of fatty acids that have been taken out of our food supply. So that's what you need to know. Like, Aurora, why don't we have this now? We used to have this for many thousands of years, but we don't have this now because of many cultural limitations that are artificially imposed upon humans that have prevented humans from eating the different building blocks that allow you to actually have a healthy, functional endocannabinoid system. So now I'm going to draw nerves in your body. This is the big, long, central part of a nerve that is called the axon. It's analogous to a timeline. That bulb that I just drew is the end. Oh, Cheeky's getting upset by something that she hears outside. Sorry, guys. Hold on. So we have essentially two nerves that are meeting one another. And then, so I'm just going to use my hands and my arms. So this arm and this arm, these are two nerves. They're coming from different directions. And where my fists are, those are the ends of the nerves. And so this area that I'm scribbling within here, there's a gap. Like, imagine the Grand Canyon. Oh, Cheeky, a gap. It is called the synaptic cleft or the synaptic gap or the synapse. That is right there, the synapse. So here is how neurological signal works in your body. You have a neurological signal that is similar to an electric signal, like going through an electric wire, like electrons flow in a wire, and it flows and flows and flows along the wires, quote unquote, of your nerves in a linear fashion in your body. And then it gets to here, oops, I can't fall into the Grand Canyon. What do I do? This neurological impulse turns itself into a chemical impulse. It turns itself into these little blue particles. Cheeky, hey, thank you. Thank you. You're okay, girl. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. She's upset. Ah, sorry. There's noises outside. Hold on a minute. All Pardon me for that brief interruption to comfort my dog. I'm saying she's number one in my life and I got to take care of her. So these little blue dots over here, to resume, represent neurotransmitters, or a nerve signal that was quote unquote electrical, traveling in a line, being turned into a chemical signal so that it can make the jump across the synaptic gap. This is also analogous to what happens at the completion or culmination of your life when you reach that aha ascension moment and you move from one, let's say, make the quantum leap from one level of reality to another. So within your own body, mind, and neurology, nerve impulses and thought impulses and consciousness impulses as they travel around your body are always making a giant quantum leap just to be able to get from one biological structure to the next. So this transformation within the synaptic gap into a chemical format, and then that thought structure and impulse reassembles over here as an electrical impulse and continues on its way in this direction. So what you're seeing is the arrow of a thought or the arrow of a consciousness impulse going in one direction, being transmitted at certain times as an electrical impulse and at other times as a chemical impulse. For a very, very long time, as modern human objective materialist science has studied neurological energy flowing around your body, it has presumed that the flow is unidirectional, just as I show you here in the drawing of the sun. The idea of light emanates from the sun and just endlessly goes outward. And that has, so the understanding of the sun and the understanding of human neurology have been similarly limited. But now what is being understood when you get to the healthy endocannabinoid system of the body is you understand that impulses also travel in the opposite direction. It is a bi-directional highway of neurological and consciousness exploration. So let's say that the green impulse, I have to switch so that I keep this consistent. The green impulse going in this direction is a pain signal. And it's saying pain, 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 like, ow, I stubbed my toe, pain, pain, pain. And that pain signal is endlessly being transmitted along these neural impulses here. The healthy endocannabinoid system basically sends an energy impulse in this direction that is complementary. And it creates little pink neurotransmitters that go across the synaptic gap and that go over here to this area of receptivity. It's literally receptors, neuroreceptors, and fills up all of their little chemical, like keys in a lock. These are cell membrane stuff, so that the nerve impulse gets stopped. So that it stops, so that you don't have an endless message of pain going in this direction. Pain, pain, pain. I'm in pain, I'm in pain, I'm in pain. Ah, I stubbed my toe, I stubbed my toe. The pink signal actually acts as a healthy stop signal. It says, oh, stop signal. I got the message. I don't have to listen to that anymore. So what I've just described to you is all about when people now in this world of being starved of healthy endocannabinoid systems, people start to begin to access either the dietary constituents or the building blocks of their natural endocannabinoid system, or when they use cannabis as a medicine that augments their own natural neurology, what they often feel is a cessation of pain signals, because they're used to, like, ow, my back, my back, my back, or whatever it is, my back, my big toe, my earlobe, whatever is the constant chronic pain signals that have never been dampened down, because again, it's supposed to be the signal bounces in one direction, it is received, and then the complementary signal comes back and says, okay, I received it. I don't need to hear this anymore. So the healthy, balanced human neurology has bi-directional signaling. Just wait until Charlie tunes in. Bi-directional signaling. Energy is sent out and energy also comes back. This is what is known in biology as biofeedback. Meaning I send energy intelligence out, it bounces off of something, it is changed slightly, and it bounces back. So there's been a limitation in what science has perceived for a very long time, but now finally people are starting to understand this. Where do healthy cannabinoids come from? What does healthy endocannabinoid system look like? Healthy endocannabinoid system has all of the constituent elements that are basically fatty acids to make those little pink neurotransmitters. And they come from different places in our diet. So basic history, I'm just going to do this fast because this is not that germane to our topic, but before World War II in the United States and elsewhere in the world, hemp was a huge part of industry and also diet. And hemp contains these natural cannabinoids. Hemp is actually the word that China, the land of China. China, do you know China? Do you know that China actually translates to the land of hemp? The civilization known as Chinese civilization was based entirely upon the hemp plant, both for food, fuel in terms of the oil, medicine, and fiber for being able to clothe oneself and for building products. So it's a huge aspect of the basis of human civilization. In modern industrialized Western places like the United States and Europe, it was criminalized. Hemp, however, was used for a very long time in the 1800s in terms of an industrial product to be able to make giant ropes and sails for ships that sailed at sea. It was a huge industrial product. Why does this matter, Aurora? Because when farmers would grow hemp for fiber or to make sails, hello, Charlie, so great to see you. What they would do is take the leaves, not the stalks are used for the fiber, so they would actually need to use those for their industrial processes. However, they would take the leaves, which are not useful to their industrial processes, and feed them to their farm animals. They were fed to both pigs, cows, and chickens. And the cannabinoids went into the milk of the cows and the meat of the cows, the flesh and the eggs of the chicken, and of course, the meat of the beef, of the pigs. So these cannabinoids, phytochemicals that are the building blocks for our natural body processes, were in the food supply all the way back to ancient China. Then after World War II, laws completely changed. Hemp became outlawed, cannabis as a medicine became outlawed, and everything about the way that food production was made changed, and there was no longer natural cannabinoids in the food supply. Guess where else is a natural place where cannabinoids exist? Mama's breast milk. Human breast milk contains cannabinoids. This is pretty amazing stuff. And that has everything to do with a baby's ability to be healthy and to digest food in the world and to have an appetite. Because remember, when you come here, you're like, I'm a light eater. I'm supposed to eat food. I'm making my facetious face in case anybody doesn't recognize that or know what I'm doing. You come here as a little tiny baby. You're like, I'm from heaven. I'm used to eating light. And they're like, now you have to eat food. You're like, your tummy is like, I don't know how to eat food. I don't know what to do. So there's breast milk, and the breast milk contains these endocannabinoids, which is a major portion of digestion, intestinal health, and the capacity to actually eat and absorb food, to eat love in the form of food and actually absorb it. I know, amazing stuff. So that's very, very brief there, and I'm moving fast because there's so much more that I need to get through. But basically, this idea that we haven't had a healthy, functioning endocannabinoid system as a society since World War II, due to these cultural farming changes, and which were all intentional when you get into different changes of consciousness reduction and social engineering. This is all part of social engineering. And it has made humans live in this unidirectional neurological state for a very long amount of time. Only recently are humans reclaiming this. This is one of the reasons why, and also my personal experience, I'm a huge advocate for access not only to medical cannabis in the sense of smoking the dried product, but literally to be able to grow it in your garden freely without any kind of oversight or legal issues, and to juice it like a vegetable. So if you have access and you're in a state where you can legally grow cannabis in a garden, grow it and juice the leaves, drink it. It is not psychoactive. It'll absolutely heal your body in the sense of creating this bidirectional oscillation biofeedback loop that cuts down on pain signals and completely changes cell-to-cell communication. And or if you live in an apartment or someplace you can't grow a garden, you can legally order viable hemp seeds. You can have trays of sprouts, even on a windowsill, and you can sprout like a succession of trays every week so that you are always able to eat some of these raw hemp sprouts. Get the hemp into your diet, get the CBD into your diet. And you can also order different CBD tinctures legally across all state lines. I advocate for all of these things. Get hemp into your diet. It is literally a plant partner that is made to go with humans, that has been with us through human history and only artificially not with humans and not allowed to be with humans for maybe about the past 100 or 150 years, blah, blah, blah. All of that history of hemp has to do with the analogy of the sun sending out light, but not only in one direction. The sun sends out light that travels endlessly to infinity in one direction if it doesn't bounce off of something. But what if that light comes to a planet here? It is either absorbed by photosynthesis, bounces off of a surface, like right now you can see there's sunlight bouncing off of my paintings, and it is bouncing into your eyes, bouncing into your eyeballs. All of the light that you're looking at on the screen, although I know it is indirect, it's not direct sunlight. Like if you were here in my presence, you would have direct sunlight bouncing from the sun off of the paintings into your eyeballs. But here we've got the intermediary of the computer and the fiber optic cable and all this other stuff. Doesn't matter, it's still bringing you light, okay? Just know that you are still getting a version of sunlight, even though it's changing. In fact, even my light bulb over here, here's my LED light bulb that I'm putting super close to my face. That is even a version of light from the sun. Maybe it's a coal-fired power plant or a petroleum natural gas power plant, all of that. Hi, Lisa, so good to see you, dear. All of that is actually an outgrowth of the sun, okay? Just so that you know that. So it is necessary to know that, okay, wait. Yeah, wait, let me go back to this. If all is working correctly, cannabinoids can quote unquote flow upstream. Stop those pain signals like the pink arrow that I drew in the synaptic gap, and neurotransmitters can be stopped or regulated in their flow. Stopped or regulated, which can also be stopped completely or, hey, not so loud, I'm getting the message, I don't need to hear you so loud, right? It's like being the conductor in an orchestra, like turn the volume down, we don't need that so loud. Requires the proper building blocks, which I just described to you. Now I want to get to this. Your brain is analogous to the sun. Your brain, your fatty idea catcher, what is here in your skull that allows you to contain consciousness that we literally think of as the center of consciousness in our body is like a miniature sun. You are absolutely connected to the sun, the stars, and the entire neurology of light through this, the miniature sun that is inside of you. And even at the top of your spine, you have a little central sun that can absolutely illuminate you, nourish you. When I talk about these different breathing exercises and being able to breathe inward and nourish yourself from that which is, directly behind your eyes and your nose inside of you, you are connecting with the sun inside of yourself. When I talk about bending and folding space-time, so the sun is not 93 million miles away, it's actually right here inside of you. This is what I am talking about. The idea of light flowing in a unidirectional vector away from the sun and nerve impulses flowing in a unidirectional flow around the body, that is from a chapter of science and observation that we're moving out of. The sun emits visible light, but also consciousness and timelines, and the heliosphere is analogous to the totality of the human form. That's what I'm talking about in my little picture over here. That's the totality of the human form. The sun's heliosphere is analogous to that bubble of energy that surrounds you. So you've got the sun, a person with a brain that is thinking and sending out all these complex levels of consciousness and has a big giant energy body. And within that big giant energy body, boom, 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 Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Earth, all of these other planetary structures. And then we with our individual energy, Earth energy bubble. And then each one of us has our own individual smaller energy bubble. Fractal, fractal, fractal. That is what fractal means. Just as we have senses to perceive our limbs and extremities, the sun has senses to perceive what is happening all the way out on its periphery, and its periphery goes even way beyond Pluto and the exoplanets, or whatever they're called, planetoids, far into interstellar space. Your smaller individual tiny brain in your human body is part of a much larger solar stellar brain in the body of sun stars and has senses that extend well past the exoplanets. That's what I just said. So you are part of a whole giant stellar solar neurology. It is a brain, a great brain of light. Big in my notes, and I sent out partial notes this morning because I was still taking notes even up to the moment that I recorded this class, but I'll send out the lecture notes again. In my lecture notes, emphasized in bold, the sun knows what you are experiencing. This is big. You are not separated from the star. You are not 93 million miles away. It does not take light 8 minutes to reach you. It does not take any amount of time for your thoughts, feelings, and everything in your experience to reach the sun. The sun knows exactly what is happening in real time. Let me get into this. You are an individual perceptor or receiver, like one facet of a much larger insectoid eye or a faceted gem. You are a lens or an aperture through which a larger consciousness looks at and perceives the world. Get it? You are one viewpoint. Humans are one viewpoint. My little beautiful dog over here, she is one viewpoint. Microbes are a viewpoint. Butterflies are a viewpoint. Giant trees, dolphins, every living organism is a viewpoint. You are one small facet of a faceted view. That's what I just said. Every individual organism and viewpoint is essential to the overarching or meta consciousness of the sun and the stars, which is not even grand enough to be described as God consciousness. God consciousness would be if we took every single photon, every single sun star, and every single galaxy, and the supermassive black holes that hold all of these galaxies or conglomerations of light together, and added that all together. That would be the multifaceted gem that is known as God consciousness. So we're not even there at that level yet, but when I talk about God or the source, that is what I'm talking about. And when I talk about this solar, stellar neurology that we are connected to in our smaller brains of light, we are getting to that level of being on the level of the sun and stars. And P.S., just as an aside, I didn't say this in the recorded lesson 10 years ago, but my Aurora Collective is like a neurological impulse that travels on this larger brain neurology from star system to star system, star to star, star system to star system, like a neurological impulse. My entire collective of coherent love light beings is one thought structure traveling around this whole big giant brain. Just FYI, just so that you know. Let's talk about time. The sun is not experiencing time in the same way that many humans on Earth are experiencing time, not in a linear fashion. This is so big. If the sun's emanations did not interact with anything, they would simply go on and travel infinitely. An expanding bubble of time, possibilities, probabilities, and light, just expanding. I'm inwardly breathing the whole entire time, I'm just going off and off and off. But the light is like a feeler similar to a bat that has echolocation. How do bats see and sense the world? Not really through their eyes, not that effective. They do it through echolocation, which is where they send out an auditory signal, waves of sound, which bounce off of something, but at a slightly different angle. They are then received back, and the brain of the bat is able to do an amazing calculation. I sent it out at this angle, but it returned to me at this angle. Therefore, I know that there is something there. And from that levels of unique calculation ability, the bat is able to create or form a viewpoint or construct a viewpoint picture of what its environment is like based on echoes, sending out sound, having waves bounce back, sending out sound, having waves bounce back. The sun does something similar with light, except the sun's senses involve a quantum use of energy, nonlinear perception, light, and consciousness, okay? Quantum in this case is not just a fun, cool catchword that is used a lot in the New Age world or the world of spiritual upliftment. Quantum is about light being born from a portal at the center of the sun. So at the center of the sun, light is born. Light is not generated from the sun, and that is the objective materialist viewpoint of it. The sun is a place, a doorway to infinity. Light comes through that doorway to infinity into beingness. Light is photons, these little high energy particles. Photons are born there as twins, all right? And you have a matched symmetrical set. When one photon in that matched symmetrical set is sent on its journey, so let's say this is the photon that's going to be emanated outward from the sun as light in a vector away from the sun, one of those photons stays home. This is big. It's also like saying there are two versions of reality. This is one version of reality where the light particle, the consciousness particle, remains with its parent. I stay home with the sun. Right? I'm here with mom and dad. Like I stay home with my parents. This is one version of reality. Remember that the leap of consciousness, the 0th dimension. In the 0th dimension, everything is together in one little spot. My shoulders go together. Everything is together in one cozy spot. But it takes a leap of consciousness for the 0th dimension to say, what would happen if a part of me is not with me? If a part of me was over there? That is what this version of that photon does. The symmetrical twin or partner of that photon imagines or has that little ant aha moment of leap, of being able to say, I can jump away from the source, away from the sun, away from the zeroth dimension. None of this is bad or wrong. This is absolutely totally appropriate because it is part of thought, consciousness, structure, and exploration of reality and time structure in the world. So going away from this source is not like, oh, I hate you, source, like, F you, source, like, I'm moving out on my own. It is not like that at all. You understand? It is more like, oh, I have an amazing opportunity. I'm the zeroth dimension, but I could also be in a line traveling over here. I could be the first dimension. The amazing part of this, though, is that this is what quantum entanglement means. Two versions of the same photon that are quantum entangled. They are connected in time. There is an unbreakable bond between them. And this version stays with the sun and this version goes far away. Except let's say this version that goes far away, it starts to do a little dance. Like, I'm dancing over here. I'm dancing with my little pinky over here. I'm dancing over here. Guess what? This one dances over here too. They are, and the sun can be like, wow, I see that you're over here and that your partner is dancing like this over there. So you are photons. You are that light which has traveled away from the sun, away from the source, away from its parent, on a beautiful journey of exploration, not on a punishment, not falling from grace, falling into hell, being ejected from Eden. I am way exaggerating facetiously so that you can understand how ironic I am in my expression here. No, that is the opposite of what you are doing. You are actually on your soul's mission, which is what you are supposed to be doing. You are supposed to be here in the physical embodiment reality, exploring the world of your senses. And then your other half, your twin, is supposed to be there, still in the sun, in that world of pure light and abstraction. And you are supposed to be quantumly entangled. And the sun is able to perceive everything that is going on with its light. You are sunlight, you are starlight. Everything that you are, everything that you have, your physical cellular matter, the neurological impulses that are jumping all around your body and your brain right now, and your system of perception that makes it possible for you to even understand words and look at a computer screen and listen to this, plus the calcium in your bones, like the elements that you are made from, the very basis of matter, all comes from not only our sun star, but from the stars themselves. They are gifts from the stars, and all of those stars are still quantumly connected to you and everything that you're experiencing. So if you're doing a little dance like this, they all know about it. And that is irrefutable. And there is no way to cut that bond. So right now I bring this up because like we're in this 5G frequency soup stew, right? And there's all this blah, blah, 5G, Bluetooth, horrendous crapola coming between us and the physicality presence of the sun. Us, like as a physicality planet, yes, we have this miasma around us, a fog that is making it difficult on the physicality level to be able to be directly connected to these things. But on a quantum level, you are irrefutably bonded through this quantum entanglement to the sun and all of the stars whom have emanated you. You are children of light, children of the sun and the stars, and your bond or bonds or connections to your parenthood cannot be broken. Everybody knows exactly what is happening here because I've spoken about the planetary quarantine, the limitations of consciousness, how come it can be so difficult to get signals out and in, why do I have to flying rainbow lasagna, fresh energy, get the groceries, bring them on in here, fresh ideas and energy and possibilities, because there is this on one reality layer, energy bubble that is falsely encapsulating this place and making it difficult for signals to come in, to come out. But on that level of pure light, pure quantum entanglement, they know exactly what's going on around here. And I wrote a song, and the loosely translated title is Everybody in Heaven Knows What's Going On Down Here, all right? Heaven knows exactly what is happening to you. Heaven knows exactly what is happening to you. So let me keep going. The sun can actually tell what is going on with the faraway photon by calculating the difference between what is going on far away and the one that never left. So in the same way that the bat sends out a signal of sound signal, and then it bounces back at a slightly different angle, The sun sends out a photon, but keeps one behind. And then this one over here is at a slightly different angle or having a slightly different energetic experience. And we can arbitrarily define it as units, like this one is unit 1 and this one is unit 80. So we can say that there's, a 79 unit difference between what these two things are doing, just arbitrarily. But the sense of the sun being able to have an accurate calculation between what is the pure light or resting state, source connection state of who you are as consciousness, in contrast, contextual contrast with who you are and who you became out here as a conglomeration of light, having experience in the world and being a sensory organ. You are like a nerve impulse that is originating in the great brain of the sun and all of the stars, and is traveling away from the brain down a nerve fiber or an axon and traveling, and that is analogous to traveling down a timeline. So back to my wonderful share screen. Rewind, 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 rewind. Let's use red as an impulse. You are this red impulse. Red impulse is traveling away from the sun, right? You are this red impulse traveling on a timeline that is a nerve impulse that is part of the neurology of a much larger place. This is my usual shorthanded cross section for the time vortex, and I'm drawing the membranes of death very, very thick today. And this is analogous to that axon, the wire of your nerve. The central core timeline of ascension is the nerve impulse that you want to be traveling upon in order to return here to the source, which is your destination. You are a nerve impulse within a much larger neurology. And these time diagrams that I draw for you are exactly analogous to this over here in nerve impulse moving along one linear timeline or one linear nerve fiber within your body. Our journey of consciousness is from the source, but also loops around and becomes the destination. Let's draw it for you because we're starting to get, the visuals definitely help beyond words. Okay, so remember, you start from the source. You come out here and you emanate in a giant loop into reality here, and then you travel up the central core timeline and return back to the source, which is your destination. This is also what we experience in terms of the sun. The sun emanates outward light, doesn't just travel in one direction, it hits something. Let's make a different color. It hits planet Earth. Planet Earth is blue, and I'm drawing it like a blue cube. And then it bounces back. And that is our job as a refinery of consciousness. We absorb light. We eat chlorophyll. We eat plants, we eat chlorophyll, we eat the animals that eat plants and chlorophyll. We have light that comes from the sun, bounces off of paintings and comes directly into our eyeballs. Then what happens? Does it just stay inside of me stuck? No, it does not. It continues on its journey. All of this is about loops and loops and loops of energy or consciousness or light that continue on its journey that does not get stuck. We will get to a topic that is near and dear to our experiences, the pooties. Pooties, P-O-O-T-I-S. Those pesky occupiers of the interstices. So throughout my teaching career, I have taught that as a lighthearted descriptive term. Because the word demon is so energetically charged, so emotionally charged, so judgmental, I've called them the peanut gallery. I've called them consciousness residues. They are fragments of consciousness. They are aspects of the genetic sweater that did not make it up the central core timeline. Let's draw it. Let's use a completely different color of black. These consciousness residues traveled askew. They are like the gutter balls. They did not make it up the central core timeline. They made it over to here, which is the membrane of death. I drew this as a very fat place so that I would have room for my pencil, but you understand it is a very thin membrane between worlds, and it brings energy from the source around in a big giant circle back to the source. It's supposed to be an empty, transitory place, a hallway, moving space between spaces. It is also known as the astral realm. It is also known as a higher dimensional yet lower vibrational space. And it is populated by thought forms who are fragments. So here you have the genetic sweater that's being knit by your experiences. It gets here, and then what's supposed to happen here? You're supposed to have an instantaneous dissolving, an instantaneous dissolution to send that consciousness in its elemental form, puzzle pieces, undo the puzzle, you didn't do it right, send back until you get it right so that it goes up the central core timeline, which is what you're supposed to do. It's like saying, try again. I don't know if you ever played that old game Operation. Now I'm getting a bit lighthearted. The old children's game Operation, where if you touch the edge, when you're trying to take out the guy's funny bone, the little thing goes buzz, buzz, and you lose your turn. This is what happens when you touch the edge of something that you're not supposed to touch. You're not supposed to touch the membrane of death. You're supposed to stay in alignment with the central core timeline and return to the destination. In the world, the antediluvian sophisticated world that we know now here as Atlantis, everybody played the game of Operation. Everybody made it up the central core timeline. Nobody ever touched the edge. There was nothing there. It was a perfectly clear place. This area here was a perfectly clear place where energy flowed perfectly endlessly because no one had ever died. It was the time before death. When we had a genetic invasion into Earth's genome from beings that lived on Mars, that were actually ejected refugees from another planet that they exploded, that they've been not taking responsibility for their activities through time for a very long amount of time, they're like, oh, we'll jump into your genetic code. As soon as that happened, that is when it started to make gutter balls. That is when our trajectory through time started to actually terminate on the membrane of death. And the experience of being in the astral or afterlife world was existed. Do you understand? Let me go back to my face because this is big. Before death was invented, there was no such thing as afterlife. There was just life. Do you get it? There was life at the source, eternal life. There was life in embodiment, connected to the source. And there was life, the ascension journey, and the return back to the source. There was none of this afterlife. There was none of this sense of like, oh, like I'm going to get born, I'm going to have a body, I'm going to hit the membrane of death, I'm going to die, my genetic sweater is going to be dissolved either fast or slow, and then I'm going to circulate back around and try it again. There was none of this sense of like, oh, trying all the wrong notes on the piano. Let me turn on my piano. Here. So, okay, hold on a second. Go back. I hit the membrane of death. Wrong note. Next life, try, game over, try again. So Pedro is a lovely, he's the person who came up with the acronym PUTIs. And he also told me about GOTA, game over, try again, wah, wah. That wasn't the right life. Try it again, rewind, try it again. Is this the right life? No, wrong. Try, rewind, try it again. Wrong again, wrong again, wrong again, wrong again, wrong, 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 wrong. Until finally you get to, oh, that was the ascension timeline all along. I only had to try 50 billion other iterations. Iteration is a math term for a version of reality. Boy, doesn't that sound exactly like the brilliant comedic movie known as Groundhog's Day, where the guy is the main character protagonist and he's endlessly reliving the same day in a time loop over and over, trying different levels of experience, sometimes going into profound existential despondency because he's like, what do I need to do to get out of here? I'm pretending and, you know, like I'm exaggerating everything for comedic potential here, but you understand. Loop after loop after loop after loop after loop until he finally got the right combination of things that he needed to do in order to transcend that negative time loop. Keep that in mind because we are doing Groundhog's Day on a planetary level, and what that character needed to do in the most pat synopsis, you would say, he needed to be a better person. I mean, he did. He was a shit. Like he needed to be a better person, but he also needed to accomplish certain tasks in his day. Like he learned all about the town folk through his many iterative loops. And he learned like, oh, that guy's going to jump, you know, do something to harm himself. I got to stop that guy from harming himself. I got to give this guy this. I got to give this guy this. I got to go here. I got to go here. And then I got to come here, play a piano recital. And then I got to go here and do this, 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 and this. So that is like, he finally came up with the correct math solution to his life. That is what each one of us needs to do in order to ascend. And that is what each one of us did inevitably in our world, in our experience, in the antediluvian sophisticated world that is presently known as Atlantis, but is actually a concurrent, not an ancient level of reality. Every single one of us became our best self, our greatest self. My spine goes up. We remembered our greatness. We all played the most amazing symphony that we possibly could with no wrong notes. And ascension means that we went up that central core timeline, having transcended the potentials on either side, the peril on either side of the versions of you that you're not supposed to be. So you're like, nope, I didn't do that. I'm not that. I'm not that. All of this is a refinery of consciousness. Moving upward through this time vortex down here at the bottom, moving upward in that central core timeline, it is moving from the general to the specific. That's how you do a painting in traditional painting. You start off with the face is just a blob. Just like when you squint your eyes and you look at someone's face, you're like, you're just kind of this light pink colored blob. All right. That's how you start off with a painting. You just make a blob. And then the more that you look, you're like, okay, well, the blob has like a light part here and a dark part here. So you just put in some light and darks, just general. And then little by little, you add more stuff, add more layers, get more and more refined until finally you're like, oh, now I'm going to add the whites of your eyes. Now I'm going to add a highlight there. And I'm going to add a highlight on the end of your nose. I'm going to add a highlight over here. Then I'm going to add some eyelashes. That's how you do a traditional painting. Work from the general to the specific. This is art history class, everyone. And that is how you live your life in terms of figuring out the right things on your timeline. But of course, you're supposed to be guided by, I use this analogy all the time with my Christ crystal, a crystalline structure. That is your third eye. It actually is kind of more oriented like this, that I look around the world with my third eye, and it tells me exactly where I need to be going, exactly what I need to be doing in every moment, so that I'm not just randomly pressing keys on the keyboard. I know exactly what I need to play in each moment. I know exactly what I need to do. And I am still working from the general to the specific in the sense of organizing and focusing and refining my characteristics, who I am versus who I'm not. This has everything to do with our understanding of the putis, who are technically pain signals of the cosmos that need to be healed. This is in the most compassionate level of teaching, and how to clear them out and how to move in the direction of ascension so that you actually reconnect with your, you would call it your divine heritage. You came from the source and from God and from divine consciousness and from pure light, and you return to pure light. Our journey of consciousness is from the source, but also loops around and becomes the destination. What changes do we experience on that journey? Think of the sun as an experimenter, sending off feelers in every direction, just like echolocation. Kapow! I just sent off a burst of feelers. This has to do with linearity of time and how the sun already experiences it. Light is emitted from the sun and it meets matter or has an interaction in some way. And then it will loop back around to the sun and give the sun the information about what has happened. That has already happened. This is big, all right? So you think little ant style. First I do this, then I do this, then I do this, then I do this, then I do this. The sun does not experience time in that way. The sun releases these bursts or pulses. Here's a pulse, kapow. And I'm breathing in because it's a big expansion. I'm sending out stuff. And then all of that stuff reaches the periphery of the sun's senses, and that stuff is sent back, the contraction. All of this stuff comes back to the sun, and the sun gets information. And it says, that is very interesting. I sent this out, and this returned back, and this is the information about what happened. So remember, I'm telling you about the multiple time loops of your life as you are going through your various groundhog days. Every time you do those loops, you're sending back information to the sun. So although you might be experiencing the hum-de-dum-de-dum, being stuck on a two-dimensional plane, breakfast, lunch, dinner, what the sun is experiencing is, oh yeah, I got all of your 20 million wrong time loops and everything that was going on with you, and I'm able to recalculate. Every time you do a new time loop, the sun is actually sending out a new pulse, a new holistic version of reality. So the sun sends out a pulse. That pulse then oscillates back to the sun and the stars. And the sun is like, I just learned from that, but I need to recalculate because that didn't all do everything just right. So now I'm going to change the math formula slightly. of possibilities, probabilities, and vectors in time. And I'm going to send out a new pulse. I'm going to send out that music instead. And then that that version of reality is experienced, bounces back to the sun, and the sun is like, ah, okay, that's fine, but I'm recalculating because not everything went just right. So now I have to change things a little bit. So now I'm going to change it to this. Now we're going to play that song. Now I send out that pulse. And then all of that bounces back to the sun. But the sun is like, ah, okay, that's interesting, but not everything got resolved. So now I'm going to play this pulse. Oh my goodness, that's strange. How did that happen? So now it's going to be a constant recalibration. This is also what my life is like as flying rainbow lasagna. It's for anyone who's just catching this as like, this is your intro, welcome, and you're diving right in, like you're diving into expert swimming here. Flying rainbow lasagna. So when I do my dance, it is a rectification dance. It is all about rectifying events that are happening in the time field from this moment now. And when every time I do it, so like here, reality is structured like this today. All right. And then I do my dance, and now check in with reality. Now reality is structured like this. Reality has changed slightly. And then I'm like, oh, now I have to recalculate. I'm just like the sun in that sense. I'm absolutely in partnership with the sun and the stars, and we are all a part of this solar/divine level of consciousness that is all about nonlinear time experience and rectifying the time field in this oscillative, responsive way. I send out things bounce back, they change. I send things out, they change. This is also like my lighthearted analogy of Homer Simpson and his time toaster in the Treehouse of Horrors, known as the butterfly effect, when he has a time toaster and every time he makes toast, the timelines change. And at a certain point, he's like, oh, just F it all, kind of like Groundhog's Day style. He's just like time toast, time toast, time toast, time toast, time, he's jump, making it, try a different one. He's trying to get back to his true reality. And finally, he gets back to a reality. It's kind of right, but not exactly right. He's like, oh, well, close enough. Just, stick with it. But he missed the reality where donuts fall from the sky instead of rain. So he really missed out in that one. It's the irony of the time toaster. But again, I'm lightheartedly diverging, but we sometimes need these little momentary breaks. Just drinking my beautiful structured water. The sun has already sent out a spherical ball of energy feelers, all of which has returned, and it has learned from the bouncing back of its own consciousness emanations. It then sends out another spherical light pulse in all directions, which then returns and it learns from it. We, consciousness in general, are those pulses. Get it? I'm emanating from the sun and the source. I'm coming here. I'm being a human or a butterfly or a dog. And then I'm bouncing back. The bouncing back can be sending back information and experiences in real time. It can also be hitting the membrane of death and handing in your hard drives. Here's my hard drive that contains like lots and lots of music and stuff on it. So this is the accumulation of like a whole year's worth of musical experience, right? So imagine that you're going through life, you're going up that time vortex, you hit the membrane of death, and you buzz in the game of operation, you die. What happens to you? What happens as you hit the membrane of death? This is big. You have your core of consciousness, and you have all of these wrong math problems that are all around you. You hand in your hard drive to the sun. As your genetic sweater is pulled out back into just a giant ball of yarn, as all of the loops of your sweater are pulled out, all of that information goes back to the sun. And the sun gets your hard drive, your accumulated hard drive, everything you need to transmit in real life. Like, here's the story of my life. Here's the book of me. I'm just using a hard drive as an example. Here's the book of me and everything that happened in my life. And the sun is like, this is so great. I wish I had had access to this 40 years ago, or even 20 years ago, because what I would have done is sent out a solar pulse that would have changed and rectified things for you, so that you didn't actually have to, here's that membrane of death. You didn't actually have to hit the membrane of death. If I sent out a solar pulse, you could have changed your directory, changed your trajectory, changed your direction is the word I meant, changed a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Guess what, everyone? This is such a relevant teaching because for the past several weeks, we've been having all of these amazing coronal mass ejections, CMEs, giant solar flares, explosions of ideas and energy, and transformative timeline shifting energy from the sun. And it is absolutely affecting us in real time, so that we as a planet, you as individuals, and humanity and all the ecosystem here as a planet, we are not going to gutter ball. We're not going to go into the edge and be like, wah, wah, game over. Like, the end of, I use that voice because it's the end of Pac-Man. Game over. You guys, Charlie's smiling because he remembers Pac-Man. That's like my only video game that I'm familiar with. But then you go back to the beginning, ready to get going again. But we don't want to do that as a planet. What we actually want to do is have the beautiful sun continually sending off these consciousness bursts that help us to redirect, to be on this ascension timeline. That is what's been happening. And it's been happening, of course, for many, many years, very, very strongly since this today is May 3rd, since April, like let's say mid-April, around the time of Passover and Easter, we've been having like eclipses, these coronal mass ejections, all of these astronomical and light-based consciousness directing and redirecting events. And many, many people feel them. Many people write about them and blog about them and share it on social media. So I read that and I'm connected on the physical sense, reading about what others are experiencing. And I'm connected on the telepathic and light sense. So it's just a beautiful confirmation. I'm like, yeah, you guys are feeling it. We are getting in the right direction. We are not going to go into the membrane of death. We are going to go on this beautiful central core timeline as a planetary whole. And this is what birth is also, that it is when you go through that little tiny wormhole at the top of the time diagram structure. Instead of hitting the membrane of death, you go through that wormhole and you are born or emitted into the next level of reality. And that is analogous to when you go to my little drawing, my diagram of down here, the nerves, and making this jump from across the synaptic gap. You are ending one level of reality here, one level of your life, one level of your planetary experience, then transmitting yourself across the giant synaptic gap, making the quantum leap, and then reassembling over here in a new level of reality with a new presence or a new stance or a new vector, vector meaning a direction, a force, direction of force, jump across the synaptic gap. Energy moves from here to here, kapow, I make the quantum leap, kapow, my energy jumps across, and then that energy impulse continues in the new direction, new vector, not death. Get it? Death is a cessation, it is an ending. But what happens when you die? Because dying doesn't mean you're a bad person. I have many beautiful friends who have died or have passed on, or have gone into that level of reality. And I even feel positive, beautiful love emanating from them in their experience of afterlife or after existence. So I want you to understand that Pooties are different from those who are living embodied people who live within the time vortex, who either died, made wrong notes, made poor decisions, got sick, got in a car accident, whatever happened, and ended up hitting into the membrane of death. These guys, I call them sometimes the peanut gallery. So we can go back to here so that it kind of helps you to be able to see. These occupiers of the interstices over here that have made a whole big giant civilization because they've been living there for an uncountable amount of time. I want to say for thousands of years, but really the time is counted within this membrane world differently than the linear time that we experience of, let's say, an arrow or a vector moving up in this direction. It's just a totally different time scale and totally different level of being. So the fatty deposits that are stuck here, they've been there for, let's just say, a very long time. And some of them have been there for such a very long time that they long for entropy. And we'll talk about energy and entropy. But those beings who are particles of consciousness here that are supposed to be making it through the wormhole, that actually get misdirected through the harmful interactions with the peanut gallery and end up on the membrane of death, those are newcomers to this world. They're like at the bottom of the pyramid scheme. You guys know what pyramid scheme is, right? It's any kind of thing like, some kind of sale, some pyramid-shaped hierarchy where there's a few people at the top and a lot of peasants at the bottom, and the peasants at the bottom are like the new recruits, and the guys at the top are the guys that get all the kickbacks. And yeah, they have to have a constant influx of new recruits. So the new recruits be like, that's great, you're a new recruit, you're going to get your intro package, you pay $300 for your intro package, and then you need to go out and recruit 10 people. You get it? And then you're supposed to do whatever, like sell some kind of a thing to 10 people. The thing that in a pyramid scheme that you're selling is totally inconsequential. The point is you have to then sell 10 to 10 people. You have to get 10 recruits. You have to get 10 recruits. This is how it works with these consciousness residues on the membrane of death. The original inceptors of the organization, I won't call it a civilization, but let's say a culture. Sorry, I'm rearranging myself here. Culture, because they're not civilized. They're not like galactic society. Yeah, I got some attitude as I'm saying this. They're like horrendous monsters. Seriously. All right, we'll get into my actual descriptive language that I used if I scroll down. They are, hold on a moment. They are, wait. Because I want to use this. Thank you for holding on for a moment. I was just trying to look for the exact words. I have it written down in here. It's something like grotesquely twisted emotional wreckage. It's something like that. All right. So we'll just paraphrase that. Grotesquely twisted emotional wreckage, as we're getting to part 2 down there. Yeah, those beings. So how did they get there? Because this all points to galactic history. They are consciousness residues that have not taken responsibility for things that they have done. That is one of the hallmarks of their mischaracteristics, and characteristics that are not eternal. So eternal characteristics that help you to have longevity and coherence and keep going in time is, I take responsibility for what I have and haven't done. I'm an eternal light being. Nothing is hidden. I cannot lie. I take responsibility for everything that I have and haven't done, as opposed to the twisted wreckage of some of these, fragmented and negative thought forms that are incredibly harmful, that are like, oops, I pressed the big red button and destroyed an entire planet or an entire galaxy. Oops. Oh, well, on to the next. I'll just invade your galaxy. I'll invade your dimension. I'll go into a parallel dimension. I won't take responsibility for any things that I've done. And I'm smiling like a maniac, being very facetious in the things that I'm saying with my facial expression, because that is not how you have longevity and coherence in time. But that is how you make a big mess. So they already made a big mess. They made a big mess in what used to be a planet that's now the asteroid belt. They made a big mess on Mars. They made a big mess on Venus. They made a big mess on Mercury. They made a big mess in the Orion belt of our galaxy. There's a whole arm of our galaxy that is the Orion arm. That's all messed up. They made a big mess over there. They've made a big mess through time and across dimensionality. And their presence on the interstices and in your genetic code as a human on Earth, which used to be Gaia, is only the most recent, horrifically sad, distressing time of them trying to stave off having to face responsibility for the things that they have done. So they have set up camp in the interstices as blockades, as consciousness residues that are not resolved, as beings who have not learned their lessons. And you know what happens when you, like if someone was camping in my hallway right there, they put a tent there. I'd be like, okay, like that's great. Like you've got a place to stay, but I can't get into the bedroom. Like I can't go where I need to go. That is exactly what's happening on the levels of the larger time field. That the time field is alive, it's a living presence. And that if you have beings who are stuck here on the interstices, setting up camp, like some kind of homeless camp where there's like a campfire and they're cooking mini hot dogs over the campfire and passing around bottles of whiskey. And they're like, yeah, ha, ha, we laugh. We don't have jobs. We don't go anyplace. We just hunker down here and, make trouble and other people can't go. It's bad neighborhood. And that is literally the place where you go when you die. You have to pass through a bad neighborhood, mental neighborhood. A bad mental neighborhood. It is also a place where people go when they have different drug experiences, different hallucinatory drugs like ayahuasca. It is a place where people go when they have near-death experiences. It is the astral realm. It is populated by thought forms that are on an anthropomorphic level, not this world that I paint back here, that is a world of pure abstraction. Thought forms can be coherent and whole and righteous. Thought forms can also be fragmentary, distorted, grotesque, appear monstrous when I say that word. Like I can use words of no judgment, but traditionally we would define in our culture that interstice would be defined as hell and populated by demons. But they're like, we're so sensitive. Like, don't call us demons. Like, pow, pow, pow. So we'll just call them pooties, all right? But it can be positive to not have an emotional charge to it. Humanity, okay. Everything that we're talking run. The drink of water and recalibrate myself here. We, consciousness, are those impulses and thought forms that have been sent out. The pooties are consciousnesses and thought forms that have been sent out. But guess what? They're supposed to be on a journey towards entropy. And that's also part of the planetary explosion, the effed upness of Mars, their problems with time travel, everything else. How did they get stuck on the interstices? What the F is their problem? And more to the point, they refuse to take responsibility for anything that they've ever done. Poor me, pow, 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 sad victim. I'm just going to, I don't have enough energy to be able to sustain myself. So I'm going to get energy from you and you and you. Poor me. And of course, I'm being very facetious in what I say. I'm sure they don't like it in the way that I'm saying this because they trouble me a lot. And we'll get into that too. Peanut gallery beings having an impact on those that are in life. I'm like, you know something? I'm alive. I'm the actual owner operator of a body. Can I have attitude? I'm the owner operator of my body. And I'm the one who's actually eating food and using the toilet and driving around and being volitional. But they're like, oh yes, I see that you have a body and I see that you have life force energy. And guess what? I want it. And guess what? I'm going to take it from you. And I'm going to install myself in your mind as a series of negative thought forms. I'm going to take your energy from you. And so all this work that we do in terms of clearing our energy centers, the vocal toning workshop that Patricia and I have taught about, different work, like I work with the tuning fork, flying rainbow lasagna work, all these different things are basically about reclaiming your real estate, kicking out the homeless encampments that are in your hallways. Be like, get out, you don't pay rent here, get out, this is my house, get out, stop cooking your hot dogs over a tiny campfire in my house. And go stop drinking whiskey, like go get substance abuse counseling. You're not supposed to be here. And, because I'm joking about homeless people. Please don't cast aspersions. Please take the lightheartedness of my presentation here. But they are analogous to the homeless of the cosmos. They don't have bodies. Do you get it? We could sing that old song. I ain't got nobody. Nobody. They ain't got nobody. And they ain't got no body because they effed up their bodies. And this is what happens when you take responsibility. You say, I made these very poor life choices. My trajectory led me to the membrane of death, and now I have no body. And when you do that, you must then say, I now openly have to admit that I made these math choices that are wrong. I was incorrect in my being. I've been shown that in my trajectory, and it is time for me to relinquish my hold on reality, on existence, and either be unmade into the point of being your puzzle pieces and go back from the beginning and try again. Or in the case of these pooties, to go to entropy. This is big, and I didn't put this in the recorded lesson. The recorded lesson is really worth delving into because it's very rich in all the diagrams that I draw. But the whole idea of flying rainbow lasagna is that there is one vector of consciousness, a direction that you can move in your trajectory of soul refinement that is back to the source and the destination as light, as infinity, as the presence of all light, all energy, and moving very, very, very fast. That what we're doing is like getting going, faster, until you're so fast that you are infinitely fast, to the point of being the speed of light, beyond the speed of light, towards being light. And in that moment of being light, you are at infinity, you're at the totality presence of infinity, at the direction of light. Not every organism has as its destination totality, fastness, light. Some beings, aspects of consciousness are actually non-being. What they are supposed to do is go to a state of non-being here. Non-being, entropy. Entropy is not hell. They are presently in hell. Hell is when you need energy and you're hungry, but you don't have it. These are beings who no longer can eat love. What we used to do in ancient antediluvian Atlantis was eat nothing but pure love. The love tone. Love tone is a reciprocal tone that is made from the reciprocal sharing of energy. I give 10 units to you, you give 10 units to me. That's the love tone. And we were in the love tone with the cosmos. The sun and the stars and the cosmos gave us 10 units of energy. And we're like, thank you for that delicious 10 units of energy. I now transmit back 10 units of energy to you in real time. There is no friction, there is no loss. We sustain each other. That is that beautiful pulsing love tone, love tone, love tone, this amazing oscillation. And I'm showing it kind of as a slow undulation, but it's also fast. It's also a perfectly fast, like the wings of a hummingbird, very, very fast oscillation between ourselves and that which emanated us. That is very different than these beings that have, they are literally the friction or the resistance or the energy loss or the entropy of the system. So in science, science describes entropy as a process, but I describe entropy in the way that I use that word as a state, a totality state. It's nothing. It is kaput. I'm using silly language, but it is a state of non-being. Here, this aspect of the flying rainbow lasagna is totality, state, and being. Everything exists there. And the things that exist here also exist here. These are the same place, but this place has two different qualities. It's a flashing on and a flashing off. When consciousness is on, that is where energy is. Energy, consciousness, beingness, light, fastness. And when consciousness is off, it is non-being. These fragmentary consciousnesses are so far off their path. Let me draw it for you. Like if I were to draw the time field, let me just use my hands because I don't want to fiddle. If this is the time field and we're talking about consciousness is like being off their path, they're not only like off their path, you know, on the membrane over here, they're like in the back bedroom. That is how far away off their path they are. They are so far away from where they are supposed to be in time, that even if you took all of the energy of all of the stars and all of the gas in the world, put it in the gas tank of their car, they still would not have enough gas to be able to drive home. There is not enough energy to accelerate them back to the point of being light. That is how far away they are. That is how deeply, energetically in dead they are. Do you get it? Energy dead. There is no way for them to be able to dig themselves out of the dead. That is one of the reasons why they're like, I'm not going to chip away at my dead. I'm just going to continue to siphon energy off of the living. And what they're trying to do is just maintain the status quo. So they very much are analogous to substance abusers or addicts who are like just trying to stay, like got to get that next fix. They got to get their medicine. They got to get their thing that keeps them afloat. And it's never enough. And it's also a pyramid scheme where they're constantly bringing new people on board. And they're like, hello, like we live in hell. We are the demons of hell. We've just brought you on board, whatever. We killed you through substance abuse or addiction or depression or whatever it is. And now you're dead. I'm smiling horribly. Like I'm a maniac here. Welcome to the club. And now what you're going to have to do is go out and get some recruits. And you're going to have to get some negative energy and feed off of it because they can't eat love. This is the whole point. That it's supposed to be a frictionless, beautiful system of energy that's continually flowing and flowing and flowing around in these beautiful figure eights all around the chakra system of the world with no friction, no energy loss, no entropy. And these beings basically create entropy for themselves. And I, of course, have a lot of criticism. I have many valid critiques of them, both as individuals and as a culture, like when you can culture a fungus or something like that. I'm sorry, there's a vacuum going on upstairs that's a bit distracting to me. And also you can tell that they're like, negative thought forms. We don't like what you're saying about us. Like we're going to try to distract your mind. So yeah, they can have an impact on your mind. They are absolutely looking for living bodies within which to interact, to take over, and to get energy from. What they did in the antediluvian world was take beings who are perfectly in alignment with the central core timeline and forcibly insert themselves into the genetic code. Force those chakras over to the side and forcibly siphon energy off of those beings. And the siphoning of energy comes from being removed from the elevated state of pure love, where you're just like love tone, everything's great, and also the way that your mind works. The natural functioning of the human mind is nonverbal. I'll say it again. The natural functioning of the human mind is nonverbal. Verbalization is the English language that I use to speak to all of you, is a implant. It is not natural, and it is one of the most direct, powerful ways that energy is siphoned off or harvested from humans who should be in a love state. When you're in a love state, you're actually in a completely frictionless consciousness experience of being totally connected to higher dimensional intelligence and reality. And it is not necessary to use words, even in your mind. You don't have to think a thought. You are existing, but not existing in a lobotomized or unintelligent or incapacitated state. You are thinking at such a fast rate that you are thinking beyond the slowness of verbalized language and verbalized thought. You do not require symbolic sound packages in order to think. I mean, like, think about or remember who you were as a tiny infant when you came here. You thought, and you did not have whatever, like, we are English speakers. We didn't have the English language, the Chinese language, Urdu, any language that is inside of you. You didn't come here with language. Language is an overlay. And you learned language, and your brain was wired or became neurologically structured to accommodate language so that you could survive and talk to other people in this world. But it is not the way that we usually think. And then the implantation of a verbalized mind that uses language also does not have an off button. That's the hacking of the human operating system at the level of yellow and the solar plexus. Hi, welcome to the planet. Welcome here from outer space. Sorry, there's another song. And I'm going to give you some language, and you're going to have to learn it. And I'm so proud of you for saying mama, dada, and understanding and learning your name. And now I'm going to give you a verbal implant in your mind that never shuts the F up. Being mean and cruel. Yeah, that's the problem. And then humans have to go through enormous amounts of spiritual strength and training, like kung fu. Like, I'm going to do my meditation training, and I'm going to learn how to control my mind. And it's like doing push-ups, like 1, 2, like going to meditate, 1, 2, going to turn off my mind, 1, 2. It's like an enormous amount of effort and self-cultivation to be able to turn off that implantation. That implantation is not natural, and it also represents a genetic modification that humans have experienced from the time when we were antediluvian pure light eaters. Get it? Every time you're talking in your mind, it makes it hard for the food to go in. Like, here comes the airplane of beautiful light food from, wait, I even have a spoon over here. Hold on a second, because I was making my coffee. Hold on. Pretend that this is full of light, all right, from the sun and the stars. Here comes the airplane. It's supposed to come into your mouth. It's full of light. It's full of consciousness. It's full of pure ideas and energy from the sun and the stars. But like, I'm busy talking about blah, blah, and I have to do the laundry, and oh yeah, I have to pay that Geico bill, and oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. My mouth is busy talking. I'm like, can't get the light in there. Just can't get the light in there. Can't get the light in there, except it's not your mouth, it's your third eye. Your third eye and your consciousness, and light is supposed to be flowing from the sun and the stars directly into our higher faculties. Presence is here to be able to inform us, literally to sustain us, like to keep you aloft. That energy and time and timeline is supposed to be coming in through there. And our implanted mind is like, blah, 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 talky, talky, talky. I'm thinking. And it's just like when the baby is like, no, over here. And you get the applesauce over here. And you get the applesauce over here. And you get the applesauce over here. And none of the applesauce goes inside of their mouth. And I make these silly faces and everything because it's just distressing. And I try to make it lighthearted because it's not okay. First of all, it's not the world that I emanate from in terms of higher levels of consciousness in the galaxy. Second of all, it is not the world that I remember from my original human experience in the antediluvian world when I was embodied there. This world here actually makes me profoundly sad at times and distressed And so I try to make these lighthearted examples because, it's a more appropriate and empowering response than just complete despair. All right. So just understand that's where my lightheartedness comes from. But very, very distressing. On the positive note, we are in this cosmic moment of transformation and resolution, which is what I'm getting to as I continue onward with this class. And I might go a little bit over time. All of this has to do with death. So we are that neural activity emanating from the sun, having experiences, and then returning those catalogs of experience to the sun. Wait, where's my catalog of experience? Hello, sun. Here's my hard drive. Here's my catalog of experience. It contains all of everything that I've ever experienced while I was walking around here on Earth with my verbal mind, chatting away, and dealing with my demons, dealing with my implantations, dealing with my verbalized presences. Like anytime you're distracted, anytime you've got thought forms in your mind that are not healthy thought forms, that are not. I mean, sometimes you have to specifically think like, I need to pick up that pencil. But you don't actually have to think that thought, pick up the pencil. You just do it. It's the flow state. When you are really in your true mind, you are in what this world right now describes in terms of artists and athletes as being in the flow state. Hold on one moment. Back to what we were saying about flow state. So what people here describe as artists and athletes being in the flow state, that's where when you're a painter, you're just like, oh, like I'm just going to pick up this paintbrush. I'm going to get my orange paint. I'm just painting. I'm painting. I don't have to narrate to myself. I don't have to be like, oh, dip the thing in the brush, dip over here, dip over here. I don't have to do that. Actually, my most favorite activities throughout my day, the most nourishing and sustaining activities that I do are things that do not require verbalization or an inner narrative structure. And that's everything from my exercise and dance routine to my painting, to my playing of my music. And so, the verbalization usually comes from when I have to do things that are more society-based and less healthy and nourishing activities, but which are still important administrative activities, like paying my Geico bill or something like that. But none of these things are natural. Do you get it? Those are not my natural behaviors. Those are not the natural behaviors of humanity. And we are here recalibrating what we consider to be natural and healthy behavior. So we're that neural activity that's emanating from the sun, and we have experiences and then return those catalogs of experience to the sun. You're supposed to be broadcasting them in real time. When you are living meditation, like when I'm in my flow state, the sun and the stars are able to tell in real time, like, oh, Aurora is painting something orange. I can see through her eyes. I can have her experience. I can sense what is going on with her. One of the things that I love the most about doing my lasagna dance is that I go completely beyond the level of ego, and I am just in this level of being that is connected to the sun and the stars. And they're all like, oh, hi, like we know who you are and we know what you're doing. And it's like an immediate download or transmission of, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. And same thing when I'm in my music, that I'm like playing my music and I'm in it and I'm in that moment and I'm completely directly connected to the sun, the stars, that level of consciousness, that brain is playing through me and I'm playing and I'm bouncing and oscillating back and forth with it. And there's no verbalization between us. Like we're just speaking the true language. This is why I say all these things. This is the true language of harmonics, my music, the visuals that I do, the telepathy that I send out, the dance that I do with my DNA. All the true language of harmonics, not English or Chinese or Urdu. All of this has to do with death, our death journey, and how that impacts our daily experience of life. Humanity's genetic conundrum, being genetically degraded thousands of years ago and being cut off from the source. That is what happened. We were made with these bodies that are amazing bodies, that our chassis are made to go far, clean car goes far. We're supposed to have this direct divine connection that keeps us going for hundreds, if not thousands of years, not to die when you're like 50 or 49 or 89. You're supposed to be able to live for a good life for a very long amount of time, for like thousands of years. But because humanity has had a blockage, it is not possible to effectively communicate one's life experience back to the source. Back then, humanity could receive impulses from the source during life, and you must do this in order to be alive. In order to be alive, like you're a baby gestating in the womb, you have to be connected to the source. The source is literally the source of life force energy that keeps your body alive. The source is still the body's life force energy that makes our body cells stay alive, that makes women's wombs able to have babies, that makes men be able to generate seed. All of these things come from connection to the source. We wouldn't be able to have continued life. But what we have is maybe like a 3% connection, a very, very small, minimal connection that keeps us going, but that is not the true magnitude of our connection. And that's why we became mortals. And all of that is due to a genetic degradation, a squashing or a diminishment or a turning down of the signal, or we get spotty reception or sometimes no reception at all. We were sent down here as recorders or collectors of information. So you're not only sensory apparatus, like my fingertips touch things and they're like, stuff is out there. Photons are touching things, stuff is out there. You're sent down here to be a recorder or a collector. You record a huge amount of information and data about your life experience. And then you're supposed to report it back to the sun in real time. This is what the degradation of our genetic code in an ancient time did, was it made us not be able to report it back in real time. Because you're supposed to be like, okay, I'm giving you 10 units of energy, I'm sustaining you and your body processes, and now you're having experiences in the world. And now you can send back information and impulses to me about what's going on in the world. And the genetic blockage at the level of the conscious intellect, the yellow chakra, and involving language in the internal dialogue has prevented humans from reaching the levels of inner silence meditation that makes it possible to get an impulse from lower consciousness back to higher consciousness, which does not speak English or verbalized language. So to reiterate clearly, we have been receiving light and life force energy from up there, out there, God, and it's been keeping us alive, although it's been a small amount. But what's been blockaded or diminished is our signal of sending back, our reflection back. So if bats send out something to the world for echolocation and then they don't get a signal back, they have no idea about the shape of reality, about the objects that are going on out there. And then imagine that, like, when you finally die, you finally send all that information back to the bat, and the bat can be like, oh, there was a big giant obstacle there. And then there was this dangerous, perilous thing over here. And then there was this really, really great thing here that I missed that I didn't know about because I didn't get it in real time. This is all about this expansion, contraction, oscillation, information of the sun sending back information to itself through us, the conduits. But again, the genetic blockage, the putis, the hallway dwellers, the homeless encampments have been preventing us from being able to effectively send back that information in real time and have this corrective experience. Corrective experience, ongoing right now. Solar emanations coming from the sun and the stars and into our presences and changing and restructuring time right effing now. All of these experiences that you have in the physical realm have to be translated into a format that can actually be transmitted back to the sun. This is exactly like if you have an analog record, old-fashioned record, like a Led Zeppelin record that has actual grooves on it. And it is an analog record because it is read as a needle goes within that little groove and the needle jiggles and it jiggles your speaker and it makes sounds come out of the speaker that then jiggle the cochlea inside of your ears. And you're like, I can hear things. But in order to transmit that analog experience to the sun, it must be translated into something that is a transmissible format, like a waveform format, like a pure digital code. So that is, it needs to be translated into some digital format in order to be transmitted virtually. So for example, we can put the experience of a physical record with some Led Zeppelin on it into the format of a digital code, an MP3 or something like that. Then we can send it over the phone. Then we can send it over the computer, or even for your voice to go from I'm an analog voice. I'm a bunch of vibrating vocal cords. How do I get me as a vibrating vocal cord into the phone so that I can travel along a wire? The phone wires, for anyone who's really, really young. Phones used to have wires and be connected to the wall. And I'm silly. And then the voice comes out of the other end as a little vibrating speaker in there. How did that happen? All of this has to be done through this transmission. In order to broadcast your sensations and realizations of the analog physical plane back to the sun, it must be translated into a different format that can be transmitted to the source. a digital code. The constant internal dialogue prevents the translation from happening. Meditation and mindfulness is an attempt to send back one's signals in real time. Meditate, meditate, meditate. Do what you can. And mindfulness is the active form of meditation. And I like that. Like if you are doing something like walking or some other cardio exercise or something that is just simple, repetitive stuff that you can do that kind of occupies the body, where you're like doing, and I get into my groove of doing, and I'm not thinking, and talking. This is what we were created to be. Beautiful human physical conduits in the third dimension, sending back information in real time, what we are experiencing. That is your job. That is what it is to be a human being, beyond the commodification of our time, events, physicality, and everything else that we can do and produce for some physical commodification, materialistic world. Like some cigar chomping guy, like, get out there and get a job, kid, go dig a ditch, go work in a factory. That is different than what we are supposed to be doing. We are human beings. We are supposed to be as a sensory organ of a much, much larger living, alive presence. And you are supposed to transmit back in real time your experience of being a living, alive presence to that larger neurology, to that larger consciousness that then is able to say, I see through the eyes of Martine or Charlie or Aaron or Lucy, and I see what it looks like from your viewpoint, or I see through the eyes of my little dog, she's asleep over there. Someone or a butterfly or a microbe in my tummy. I see through the eyes of that don't exist, they don't have eyes. I see through the sensory organs of a lactobacillus bacterium, and I'm able to sense what is going on, like in Aurora's intestines. I know that's a little bit TMI. Let me drink. But that is what being is. You are supposed to be, and that is your purpose for being, for existing. And that is what you are supposed to do with your life here. This is the answer to big existential questions. Why do I exist? You're supposed to be, and you're supposed to be this physical conduit apparatus experiencer, real-time broadcaster, live streaming your life, but not on YouTube, on consciousness broadcast with the sun and the stars. Everything we are here came from the sun. Your body, elements, neurological signals, and consciousness itself. We are the sun here exploring itself, interacting with itself. You get it? You're not different from the sun, and the sun is not 93 million miles away, and it is not something other than you. It is self. That is self out my window, and this is self, and you are all self, and we are all these fractal, fragment, refractory aspects of self, exploring self. You, a cat, a blade of grass, are all interacting in the sun. That's just a simple moment of being in your garden with your cat or with your dog. That is the sun exploring itself. Life becomes much more interesting and gratifying when you can receive in real time what other parts of yourself are doing. Right now, you are identifying as the sun, and life becomes more fun and gratifying when you're like, I can feel what a cat is doing, what a blade of grass feels like, and what the human feels like, and all these things fitting together. The genetic blockade that has prevented humanity from achieving its full potential prevented Earth's consciousness from expressing its full potential. So this is not just your problem, it's the planet's problem. Again, I'm facetious, it's horrible. It has also impacted the sun in terms of the amount of information the sun has available to it. It's also the sun's problem. And guess what? The sun is connected to all the stars. It's all of the stars' problem. And guess what? That's why I am here as Aurora. Because everything is not perfect. I joke about this, swimming backwards on a cloud, eating a strawberry in the higher dimension. It's not like that, because there are problems here that in your life, in your body. There's a problem on the planet. There's a problem with your solar system. There's a problem with your star. There's a problem with your galaxy. There's a problem with all light everywhere. Nobody is swimming backwards on an interdimensional cloud, eating a strawberry with life being perfect. And this is literally why I'm here as Flying Rainbow Lasagna, to help with this rectification event, so that the oscillation and recalibration happens, so that you do get to be on a higher dimensional level, floating in bliss, eating a strawberry. Real-time feedback for GPS is more powerful than a map. You know this. When you have a map, you're like, okay, like here's the general map of what roads are shaped like. But when you have a GPS on your phone, it tells you there is an obstacle ahead. Mine says, speed trap ahead, go slower, speed trap ahead. A map will not tell you that. So this is the value of being able to be directly communicative with the sun and the stars in real time. The sun and the stars and God, presence, divinity, cares about you profoundly. You are not abandoned here. You are quantum entangled, photon to photon. Heaven knows exactly what you are experiencing here. Heaven cares about you profoundly, and you are also here on a purpose, not being punished, not ejected from heaven, not a fallen, whatever, fallen angel or grotesque emanation or something like that, on purpose, doing a mission here. Just handing in the book of your life at the moment of death is less helpful and informative to the sun than real-time sharing. I've already told you that. And because the sun would have wanted to change and respond just as we respond to the cells in your body. So if you're alive and your shoulder is talking to you, it's like, ow, 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 something is hurting me. And you're like, okay, like, let's see what's going on. Like, ow, like a bee is stinging me or something like that. Like, let's do something about it. If we are like the sun, then, if you find out 40 years later, like, ow, a bee was stinging me 40 years ago, like, okay, neurology, that doesn't really help me that much. I needed to know in real time, so I could have done something in real time. That is what we are experiencing right now. So please take heart, please be invigorated by the knowledge that all the coronal mass ejections and X flares and amazing transmissions that we're receiving from the sun and the stars right now is absolutely the response to our pain signals and difficulties and challenges of our present level of being and distortion, that the sun and the stars can tell that we're being stung by a bee and that they're responding in the moment now. You are not abandoned. When humans begin to ingest cannabis after being bereft, their pain signals start to shut off and disappear. We're getting into part 2 and shutting off the pain signals that are those occupiers of the interstices. When blah, 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 no more backlog. That's a big part. That a lot of this is about emotional backlog. So, I'm sure many of you have had this, like you fall asleep on your leg or your arm and you wake up and you're like, your arm feels dead, or it feels like pins and needles because you temporarily cut off the hose, like the flow of energy, like you pinched that hose. And then as energy flows back in, those little neurological signals feel like pins and needles. It's like, duh, 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 ow, 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 ow. That is what we are feeling with these beings that came from a planet that exploded, that is now the asteroid belt, that came from Mars that exploded, that came from a far distant dimension. That we are getting all of these accumulated pain signals that are about their lives and their ow, ow, ow. And this is part of unity consciousness, but none of this is about hug demon. None of this is about giving some, justification like, oh, they're there, dear, it doesn't matter. Like you blew up your planet. Like, it's not like that at all. It is very much about taking responsibility on a cosmic level. So unity consciousness does not just mean like, kumbaya, hug evil. It's not like that. All right. I joke about the kumbaya moment. No, it is not about that. But it is also not about rejection. It is about acceptance. Like, what real acceptance is? If people are homeless and they are vagrants who are struggling with substance abuse, it's like, yeah, something where you are in your life, like you definitely effed up in some way. If you ended up in that level of reality, that you definitely did something wrong in the math problems of your life and the choices that you have made and the trajectories that have brought you to that moment. And same thing with recognizing like those beings who are part of the entrenched culture on the membrane of death. They have made very, very poor choices in their life trajectory. And it is really necessary for them to take responsibility. So in the pure light of transformation and pure, coherent, blazing heart compassion, you're like, wow, I really see you and I really love and accept you. That is not the same as kumbaya, let's hug. It is really like saying, wow, like I see all of the profound mistakes that you've made. I'm not judging you. I'm not denying it either. I accept you, meaning I see all the things that you have done wrong. I see all the red X's on your math homework and you really, really effed up. In fact, you effed up so much that, like I said, you're not in the time field here. You're all the way in the back bedroom, maybe even in another apartment, maybe even across town. That is how far they are off their path. And that is how impossible in terms of basic calculations is for them to return to light. So a lot, because in the teaching that I have recorded on Teachable, and many people in their present moment, what they say is what you want to do with those fragmentary consciousnesses is send them back to the galactic central sun for reprocessing. Yes, that is what you wish to do. However, they would look at that like a free ride, like, hooray, I get to go back to light. Like, that's like being like, I not only have $0, but I'm indebted the entire economy. Like whatever the economy is worth like $15 trillion or whatever it is. That is like, I'm in debt $71 trillion. But you're like, we're not only going to get you back up to zero, we're going to zero out your bank account. We're going to bring you up to $71 million. Like, you're going to send me back to $71 million. Like, I'll do it, which is like, being sent back to energy. That would be a very, very convenient thing. Do you understand? Like, imagine the amounts of death and suffering and torment that you would have had to create with your life choices in order to be negative $71 trillion in your energetic bank account. That is something that we would define as profoundly negative, evil, harmful, wrong. It's okay to use those words. Like, we're talking about an entire grouping of consciousnesses and systemic culture that thrives on cruelty and suffering, that has intentionally done a lot of bad things: murder, rape, harm, destruction, the invention of cancer, basically socially engineering as much misery. They have created a debt for themselves of negative $71 trillion, bankrupt their economy. They can't pay their debts. And does all of this sound familiar? Does this sound a lot like Earth's geopolitics? Like, this country is totally indebted. There's no way they can possibly pay their debts there, but this guy's indebted to this guy, and this guy owes this guy, and this guy owes this guy. No one's ever going to pay their debts, and they're all going to keep on glad handing, like, just shaking hands, be like, yes, my face is facetious. Sure, I'm going to pay that debt, but no, all they're doing is reshuffling their debts, servicing things, and pretending. They're never going to pay their debts. That's on the geopolitical level. They're like, yes, the economy will completely fall and be bankrupt before they're going to service the national debt. No, but you have to pay your Geico bill, but they can rack up enormous debts. That is analogous to the beings who live on the interstices. They have incepted human culture. If there are things that I talk about in, quote unquote, the economy of hell that sound familiar to the world of humans on the surface of Earth, it is because the beings that are on the economy of hell have been social engineers, talking to people in their minds, getting them to create things like pyramid schemes and other forms of energy harvesting that are almost exactly like what you experience, what is experienced in the afterlife realm. And there's also this strange jumping back and forth and bleed through between people who are willingly conduits and embodiments for the peanut gallery. So I'm like, peanut gallery, F off, get away from me. I don't want to listen. You're not going to, this is my body. You're not going to live through my body. But some people are like, peanut gallery, live through me, make me rich and famous. And remember that point in the movie The Matrix, when that one character named Cypher, he's eating the steak. He's like, I want you to reinsert me into the Matrix, but I want you to make me someone famous, and I want to eat steak. And he eats the steak like chomp, chomp, chomp. Some people are like that. You have to recognize some people are complicit with evil. And I know that's a very charged word, but they are complicit with that negative organizational culture that farms misery. And in the larger cosmic context, to describe all of this more accurately, the farmers of misery were meant originally to be scavengers. They were meant to be scavengers of lower vibration, negative emotional energy, such as sadness, grief, hatred, these levels of pure suffering, that what happens when you go askew. They were supposed to be scavengers. So imagine scavengers like some of these like little crabs that run around in the bottom of the ocean, and they're supposed to like eat some rotten meat. Like there's something rotten there. I'm making like a little, like a little disgusting kind of creature. Like imagine that kind of a thing. Like, gonna eat some rotten flesh, and there's some rotten hot dog over here, and some of this and some of this, and that they kind of like sustain themselves. But if there is nothing to eat, if there's no rottenness, their entire population would die, right? When we lived in the antediluvian world, there were no rotten hot dogs for any of these little disgusting crab-like creatures to eat. There was only pure light, pure love tone. Every single one of us having our mission, every single one of us living for thousands of years in purity and in direct connection to God and the source and to the sun, and directly responding at every moment what we are experiencing. No extra fat on the body, no nothing hanging around the edges. No sadness, no grief, none of these lower vibration emotions for the little gross crabs to eat off of. Theoretically, those little gross crabs should have just gone into a state of starvation and non-existence. But what they did instead was they said, there's not enough gross, rotten hot dogs for us to eat. let's make some food. And they invaded the human genetic code, squashed humans over to the side, began to farm you for suffering and misery, and made food for themselves. And that wasn't just enough, that was wrong. But what they also did was, let's say their population was 100 gross little scuttling crabs looking for rotten hot dogs. They then said, oh, there's so much food, we're going to expand. We're going to now have 200, 500, 5,000. Pyramid scheme, get it? Every single one of you go out and recruit. Every single one of you make 10 more of yourselves. And then they now have a population overexplosion where there's 71 million gross little scuttling crabs, and they all want to eat rotten hot dogs. And so they're like not what was supposed to be once scavengers, or possibly you could think of them as predators, doing their job in the ecosystem of energy. Now they have become farmers. And they also have this sense inside of themselves of there's never enough, like addicts that are like, there's never enough, there's never enough. I'm going to need more. I'm going to need more. There's not enough gross rotten hot dogs for us to eat. And look at these people here. We're going to need more. We're going to need more. We're going to have to make more misery. Farm for more misery. Okay. Plant more misery, more misery. And so that is the whole idea of what is going on in our world right now. Harvesting of energy, harvesting of misery, and it's never going to be enough. So they're just like, well, you're just the present generation of misery. We need more misery, and it's never going to be enough because we are $71 trillion in debt. And what that means is that their emotional tone would be like so down, so far down. Like this is like, I'm up here doing the backstroke, having my planetary ascension. I'm so blissful, I'm eating the strawberry. That's like, having $1 million worth of energy. They're like negative $71 trillion. They would be plummeting down in the depths of profound suffering. All right, now this comes to my personal mission and why I created Flying Rainbow Lasagna. This is a doorway or an alternative pathway to entropy that makes those beings not have to go into a state of profound suffering where they would have no food, but still have the requirement for food and not be able to eat love and be in that state of suffering for about the next 13 billion years. So this universe is roughly 13 billion years old, roughly middle age, prime of our lives, I say, prime of our lives. What will eventually happen with this universe? Not the cosmos, universe, this one particular version of reality. All of the stars that can possibly be born will be born. They will all generate and send out light, 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 light. At a certain point, there's no more raw materials for stars. At a certain point, all the stars that are here will die. Their light emissions will stop. At a certain point, all the stars will collapse backflip in on themselves, all become black holes. All of that light will be sucked back in and whoosh into a new level of reality, which is analogous to jumping across the synaptic gap, jumping from one reality structure to another reality structure. And then here's the key point for you guys. Everything that is left behind is cold, cold, cold entropy, a Bose-Einstein condensate. I can write that out for you if you need me to, but we're just running short on time. A Bose-Einstein condensate is a super dense form of matter that happens when you take molecular structure and you remove all heat or all molecular movement from it. So instead of the molecules moving around, or moving around very slowly, or even in ice, things that are frozen or solid molecules move extremely slowly. Imagine no movement. And what actually happens is all of those molecules end up on a quantum state, kind of overlapping and smearing on top of each other and creating what is known as a super dense form of matter, a Bose-Einstein condensate, which actually equates to unity consciousness. Unity consciousness is at both ends of the spectrum of physicality, of light, and of consciousness. There is the level of super fast motion, infinity, everythingness, beingness. Then there is the level of entropy, no motion, no volition, no motivation, no perception, no beingness. That is not a hell state. The hell state is when they exist in this level of the interstices here, these membranes between worlds, cannot eat love. So it's like, there's love everywhere, but I can't eat it. I can't get the applesauce into my mouth. There's love, applesauce everywhere, and they can't eat it. So what are they going to make? They're going to make rotten hot dogs, because that's what they can actually eat. They can eat something that is a lower, slower vibration than love. So they're going to go around trying to degrade love, not being scavengers, but being farmers instead. And what's about to happen in terms of planetary ascension and world ascension, and a different song that I wrote that is called meta liberation, meaning overarching liberation of every single colonized world that is in a petri dish of consciousness. Here, parallel realities, past, present, future, other star systems and other levels of the galaxy that we are all living in concurrently, all of these little encapsulated places where energy has been harmed and harvested, all of those prisoners are being set free. Meta liberation. It's a beautiful song and I love it. And P.S. Join my new ongoing Bandcamp subscribership. Listen to all of my new songs. But that is not about that. But that's where you can find that because it's not released yet. Meta liberation is about all of these prisoners being set free and no more rotten hot dogs. And what are all these little scuttling crabs going to do? What would happen is if there were no entropy, they would just sit there being hungry for 13 billion years. And that to me is the most horrific, distressing idea of, suffering that one could possibly experience. I've created this as a tool of mercy, justice, and compassion for those beings who are profoundly off of their path. I know some of you do not know my journey of the past year, but I've been in very profound, very real electromagnetic and astral hell realms. And I've spoken to some of the occupants there, and some of them are what I would consider very long existence organisms. Like they've been stuck in that level for eons, an incredible amount of time, long enough for them to long ago become bored with the sense of being a scuttling crab and having to farm you guys for some kind of energy. You get it? They're at the top of the pyramid and they let the new recruits farm. They're like, can't even deal with touching humans. You understand? They consider it like scrubbing the toilet. Like, got to touch the human, got to scrub the toilet, got to get some negative energy from them. Like they hate it. And to them, it is the most amount of boredom and suffering to have this existence like vampires. Like, to go suck some blood off of humans. Like how boring, how repetitive, how Groundhog's Day, how many times have I done this? When I talked with them about entropy, they were actually very, very open to it. The long existence ones are really ready to go to entropy. And I used some lighthearted examples. My conversations with them were not lighthearted at all. So believe me, I'm just being lighthearted in my presentation here. But it's the new guys. It's the new recruits. It's the new little scuttlers that are like, oh, we got it. Poke and prod and harm those humans. Do all these different things to them. I'm going to get that energy from those humans. They're the new recruits. They're like, gonna get out there and do it, gonna make a buck. They're very active in the economy of hell. Those guys are the ones who are less open to the idea of entropy and need a little bit more encouragement in terms of how valuable it will be to them not to be stuck without any food source for the next 13 billion years while they await the entropic heat death of our universe and finally are able to be set free from their suffering and consciousness imprisonment. That I say with all of the seriousness and distress that I can possibly communicate to you, active living people, and to any non-living consciousness residues who might be tangentially perceiving or experiencing this through my neurology or the experiences of anybody else who is listening here. That would be just about the worst imprisonment, suffering, pain it could possibly be possible to be, because there's not going to be any more food. Do you understand? We are all returning to our true light bodies. In our true light bodies, we are completely connected to God, the divine source. We're at the destination. We are in ascension, planetary ascension. I recorded these lessons 10 years ago. We are in that moment now. We are in that moment where each one of us will be so divinely connected, where there will be no errant thoughts and no emotional residues, rotten hot dogs, for these scuttling crab-like scavenger farmers to be able to eat off of us. Their food supply is going bye-bye. This is meta liberation, not just from this planet, but from every planet, every dimension, and every place that they have tried to harm and imprison and farm for misery. This is all part of my journey here as Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and it is also part of each one of you and your individual missions and soul's purpose and soul's trajectory It is an amazing time to be here and to be experiencing this. Meta liberation is an amazing, upcoming, ongoing inevitability. Those beings who have been farming humans for misery for a very long amount of time, and I shared that teaching from Don Juan de Castaneda, Carlos Castaneda's writing about Don Juan talking about the humaneros, keep chickens in chicken coops, keep humans in human coops, and farm the humans. Imagine one day you woke up and all of your chicken coops were empty. No one was in there anymore. Say, oh, S-H-I-T, have no food, have nothing to do. And imagine if you can't get any more chickens. And imagine being hungry like that for 13 billion years, but not being able to die because you're already dead and having no place to go because you got no energy left to go there. Got no gas in the car to make you go. That is the alternative to entropy. I continually encourage and offer those consciousness residue beings in the interstices between worlds that is known as the astral world or hell or the world of negative thought forms to go into entropy. And also when I do my dance and my genetic behavior, that is what I am doing. I am sending these beings to entropy. And many, many good light workers are here and they are intentionally doing what they call, these clearings and sending of consciousness residues. They call it back to the galactic central sun. Yes, but and can't just clear the debt of $71 trillion of profound suffering and misery that has been farmed for such a very long amount of time. Do you get it? Everybody wants a golden jubilee. Jubilee is the idea of debt forgiveness. That's how people in the levels of like the government and the Queen of England, they're all like, Jubilee, like my monocle, my top hat, Jubilee. Like, let's all just wipe the books and nobody worry about anything. Oh, it doesn't matter. They want to be like that and very facetious. Jubilee of all of the profound suffering that they ate off of you and me and everyone else. Everyone who's ever been tortured and everyone who's ever died. And all of these things, no forgiveness, no learning. So, I mean, I need to go through a little bit more of my notes, but all of this has to do with the occupiers of the interstices being like fatty blockages and fatty deposits within a much larger body. This is the body of time, and there are these things that are on the membrane here, and energy can't flow through that membrane. Consciousness can't get back to the sun, consciousness can't get back to stars, people aren't learning. Everything about us in this real-time broadcast of the sun expanding and contracting, a new version of reality, the time toaster is popping, all these things are happening, is about learning and refining. And there are these blank spots, cellular dead zones, places where the cell signal hasn't gotten out, places in the interstices where there are these organized cultures where they're like encampments and they have not let any light information out of there for a very long amount of time. They've got victims, survivors, experiencers, whatever you would like to say, stuck there being farmed and tortured for a very, very, very long time without information actually getting out to the larger thing, and they themselves haven't learned. And the learning is all about responsibility. Light is information. When light actually flows through those interstices and it reaches those stuck consciousnesses, the light acts as a universal solvent. Love and the love tone is also a universal solvent in your own body. So I use this as an example and I know we're a little bit over time, in the recorded lesson, the idea of a pilgrimage. So when people go on pilgrimages as a devotional activity to whatever deity or principle that they are devoted to, they do something like perambulate around a mountain or walk a very long distance. When anybody who's done a lot of cardio, who's trained for a marathon, I've never trained for a marathon, but I do know I'm familiar with the experience of when you do a lot of cardio or you do a lot of work, what you do is you go into deep fatty reserves. And even though you might not be a fat person, there are deep fatty reserves that are in your liver, that are in your heart, that are some of it is in like your actual organs of your body. And also think about it kind of like in your body system, you've got your cash, that is the energy that you spend fast. That's your blood sugar. There's your reserves that are in your liver. That's energy that's kind of more in your savings account. Then you've got energy, that's your investments, your real estate. It takes time to liquidate real estate, got it? Or bars of gold or Krugerrands or something like that. Like it takes a long time to sell your gold and your diamonds and all that stuff. That's for your long-term storage. When you do a pilgrimage or training for a marathon or get really into these levels of cardio, you burn through your cash. Then you're like, I'm thirsty, I need some Gatorade. Then you also burn through your liver and through all that available fat and stored energy there. Then after hours of exercise, you finally start to get into the deeply stored emotional stuff that is part of your body. And it's trauma, suffering, pain, and undigested emotional experiences. People, when they are doing grueling marathons, it's not just about the pain of their body, like, oh, like my muscles are so tired, my knee hurts or my ankle hurts. They are really also going through emotional pain that a lot of times you'll see a torment on a runner's face, like, like I can't even make that face, but they're like sweating and they look really tormented. It's not just physical pain. They're going through emotional pain. And a lot of runners talk about this, things that come up in their internal dialogue, the things that they're releasing stored emotional energy. And it is a very, very valuable thing to do. It's not about tormenting yourself at all, and do it in a way that doesn't hurt your joints and everything like that. But you get into deeply stored stuff so you can release it. That is the idea of a pilgrimage, not just to get blisters on your feet from walking so many miles. And a lot of pilgrims get blisters on their feet from walking a lot of miles. It's not why you'd be like, God's going to love me because I have big blisters. No, it is really about a form of self-purification. It is really about a form of release. It is about a form of getting into the deep, deep inner reserves of emotional trauma and emotional experiences that have not been resolved, and resolving them, digest them. Like, I'm going to sell that gold. I'm going to sell those diamonds. I'm going to turn them into energy that I can actually use right now. Or like I've spoken about, digesting the meatloaf. If you have a big chunk of undigested meatloaf, you need the enzymes to unlock the experience. You get the perspective to be able to actually unlock these emotional energy experiences, to be able to actually say, that's why that happened to me, and I now release it, and forgiveness happens and energy flows. There are giant undigested emotional experiences in the state of the cosmos, in time, in the flow of time, that need to be resolved and healed. And what we are doing right now is analogous to a pilgrimage, where we are really going deep into the stored trauma. So our planet has stored trauma in the sense of genetic invaders, things that changed us from our beautiful light-eating selves into physicality-eating selves. Our planet has stored trauma. Mars has stored trauma. The asteroid belt has stored trauma. Our solar system has stored trauma. The arm of the Milky Way, that is known as the Orion Arm, has stored trauma. A lot of stored trauma that is being resolved right now in the sense of clearing the interstices of these ancient accumulations of consciousness that have not yet resolved their responsibility, that their self-responsibility of the lessons and choices that actually brought them to be in that state of being incredibly energetically in debt. Again, that means it's being far away from where you're supposed to be as consciousness, 71 trillion miles away from where you are supposed to be as consciousness. They don't make enough gas to be able to get you in your car, to be able to get you there. So well-meaning light workers, I love you, I hug you, and I thank you for your service. However, please refine your understanding that this is not about sending everything back to light because there's a huge debt. My solution is to send them to entropy, which is a complementary level of non-being that is not suffering. When beings are in entropy, they don't hunger, thirst, lust, motivate, or have a volitional state of wanting to come into being. It's very, very different than being scuttling crabs without any rotting hot dogs to eat. That's a state of profound suffering. That would be considered hell. No one to eat, no humaneros, and no humans in your humaneros. And what are you going to do for the next 13 billion years? You know, very, very effed. As opposed to being able to resolve these difficulties. When light and energy and love flows through those profoundly dark places, it is healed, meaning it is shown to be part of the holistic whole, and the events and energy and experiences are transmitted, and the organisms or creatures there have to admit to the truth of their life and take responsibility for what they have done in order to be set free. And being set free does not mean going back to the light, kumbaya. It means going to entropy. And this is very, very big. And as I was trying to prepare for today's class, There were so many life disruptions and so many internal disruptions, and the negative entropies and putis were all like, we're naughty children. You have to send us to the light and blah, blah, blah. And I'm trying to make it very, very clear in this presentation that that would be irresponsible of me as a protector of the time field. You know, I've spoken about that many, many times, my role in protecting the sanctity and correct functioning of time itself. You can't just have a golden jubilee, my cigar, my monocle, my top hat, jubilee, everything is fine. Wash it all away, because guess what? There's a huge imbalance. The things that have held these consciousnesses artificially aloft when they should be plunged down, and none of this is linear, but I'm just using the analogies. That's all suffering and misery and energy that came from you and me and many others. The invention of death, think about that. Think about coming to a planet and inventing death. Think about all the deaths that have been created over human history. Not just human deaths, but deaths of animals and deaths necessary to support and sustain life as you eat food. What we're doing right now in planetary ascension is moving into a time beyond death. We are rectifying all of those deaths. You're not going to have to die anymore. Food is not going to have to die for you to eat it anymore. All of that is changing. Do you get it? We're going back to that sense of who and what we were before death was invented. Immortals. We are returning to immortality. It is a different level of being. The food is leaving the chicken coop. They are not going to have anyone to eat anymore. These occupiers of the interstices must make a choice. They must comply. They must act in order to not be in that profound level of distress of basically being left behind as all this light energy whooshes into a new format, and that they don't have a resolution to their problem because they are the pain signals of the cosmos. A bee is stinging my arm. Do something about it. That's the whole idea of this endocannabinoid system, that when you have a healthy cannabinoid system, there are pink signals that say, I hear your pain, let's do something about this. These putis and demons, in the truest, most cosmic law and compassionate sense, are pain signals of the larger metaconsciousness body of time, saying there's pain here and it needs to be healed. But healed does not necessarily mean hug or kumbaya. Healed means a recognition of the very real mistakes, volitional choices, and non-volitional activities and context that have brought things into being, and then a rectification. That is also the work that I do as protector of the time field. A calculation of what is volitional to you? What are you personally responsible for? What was your context? How did this happen? I'm a computer analyst. Things are effed up. Now I have to analyze this. Here's a list of all the ways that things are effed. Okay, great. This is you chose to F. You chose to F. You chose to F. Here's all of the F that happened as a byproduct context, and here's all of the F that was outside of your control. And that these are different levels of effedness. You get it? Let me read a little bit from my notes. Okay, in terms of planetary collective ascension, achieving a higher vibrational state and no longer relying upon plants as intermediaries for us to be able to ingest light. Presently, plants have chlorophyll, they ingest light, they turn it into starches. We eat the plants, or we eat the animals that eat the plants. Beginning to ingest light through the third eye, ingesting directly all of that consciousness, all of that nourishment, all of those ideas. Eat it from the sun that is inside of your own mind. This is how we used to live. This is how we can live again. Begin to emanate only high quality ideas. This is also what planetary ascension is. As you eat the best high quality food with your mind, you also only emit only the highest quality food and emotional energy with yourself, with your being. No more rotten hot dogs, no more crap junk food thoughts, no more crap junk food feelings. None of you want to emit crap junk food feelings because it doesn't feel good to do them. You've been farmed for them. Please love and forgive yourself and practice blazing self-compassion. None of you want to suffer. None of you want to be farmed of misery. Something farmed you of this misery. And this ascension process is moving back into joyful states of bliss, and you are being healed, and you get to live in the most exalted states. that is actually your birthright and how you're supposed to live. And if any of you feel exhaustion, boredom, tiredness, ennui, or just feel like you can't go on any longer, I definitely understand. I give you this message so that you can know what you are heading towards in this marathon. When you break the tape at the end of this marathon, you don't die. You do ascend. You go into a state of blissfulness that is an exalted state. And sometimes I get flashes of light that are confirmations from above. As I'm taught, I get getting a flash of light as I'm saying that. You go into an exalted state. I have spoken a lot about hell, the occupiers of the interstices. I have to also talk about heaven. This just give me a few more minutes to be able to talk about this. So we're also completely changing one's relationship with food, because I talk a lot here about emotional eating. This is not about fat shaming. We love anybody of any size. This is really about health of the body metabolism, and energy goes in versus energy goes out, and the analogy to that and emotional energy. So some people can also be a slender person, but with fatty blockages in their hearts or their livers or other places in their body. It is about stored and accumulated suffering, trauma, and undigested emotional experiences. And then people sometimes eat extra on top of that, or sometimes people are addicted to things like carbohydrates, because carbohydrates give you a temporary lift, but then they don't actually really help you. And that what really helps is going into the emotional backlog. And that's also some of the work that I do directly with people in helping people. The eon that is about to pass. Let me just drink. The eon that is about to pass. We are exiting one age and entering a new age on a massive grand scale, the turning of the wheel of time. Consciousness that has been stuck, like fatty deposits, in storage on the interstices is being resolved. Pilgrimage or training for endurance sport, I told you all about that. Sorrow and regret are burned off calorically through this cardiovascular activity. Breathing means adding oxygen to the body. Oxygen is a physical solvent. When something oxidizes, it is being digested by oxygen. When you see metal that is rusting, you are literally seeing metal being digested by oxygen. It's being broken down by oxygen over time. When we breathe, when you puff and puff, I'm running. What's happening is you're bringing in more and more and more oxygen so that your body can oxidize more stuff that's stuck in your body. You're getting rid of accumulated stuff. Oxygen is like love. These two are comparable, analogous. And you have more love that comes into your body, love as the universal cosmic solvent. Love, universal solvent, dissolving emotional blockages. Love is the universal solvent, dissolving emotional blockages. None of this means kumbaya or hug a pootie or anything like that. Just being really clear. Love really means I keep my heart open when insights come up as to what is the origin and significance of formerly blocked emotions. So when you have these insights come up as you are on your pilgrimage, as you're breathing, and a lot of the trauma release work that I do is about breathing and releasing and transforming, then you have to accept, there's that insight. That's why that thing happened. Okay, I accept it. That is what that means. That is what that means. No longer denying something or ignoring it, which is what has been happening with these beings who exist on the interstices. And they are very much the accumulated pain signals saying, I'm in your face, 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 I'm not going away, I'm not going away. Deal with me, deal with me, deal with me. That's everything. It's everything that we've been going through. And that's why life has been so uncomfortable on this ascension journey for like the past 2 years as individuals and as a collective. Clearing stuck energy in your life, clearing the stuck energy in the body of the universe, clearing those beings labeled as demons or jokingly pooties. They're the stuck energy of the cosmos. The actual cosmic energy quality of love is an unimpeded flow of energy and consciousness on its journey through life and through afterlife or death, the membrane between worlds. Unimpeded journey. If you die or whatever is your level of exiting from this reality, it should be an unimpeded journey, not getting stuck in an astral homeless encampment where you will then be tortured and victimized and farmed and harmed in other unspeakable ways that simply extends the misery and things that have happened to you in your life in order to be able to feed their pyramid scheme or economy of hell. The demons or pooties have been stuck energy deposits of emotion and consciousness for a long time, cutting off humanity from its divine connection to the source, solar consciousness, those invaders from Mars that came into this planet. That song, Sweeping the Sands of Mars, it's what came from a dream this is all about. They are the accumulated pain signals that came into this world that didn't get emotionally resolved of what happened to them, of their own traumas, and they spread that trauma to this planet. And they cut off humanity from its divine connection to the source and the solar consciousness. And in many ways, every planet in this solar system has been negatively affected by the journey of these unhealed thought forms. The kindest way I can describe them, because I've been having a tough morning, is to call them unhealed thought forms that need healing. Why do these booties exist? They're like vampires, and vampires are literally our culturally created myth so that we could have an allegory to understand and describe their actions and motivations. Got it? Why would they exist? They want to try to continue to escape having to pay for their deeds, their energetic debts, and the choices they have made on their own soul trajectory. One moment. So these beings that I'm describing got into the interstices a long time ago, but again, an unmeasurable amount of time ago, because it's truly a hyperspace reality where time is measured differently. It is beyond linear time, just like the level of time that I was talking about with the sun. And they have accumulated an enormous emotional backlog of things that they need to resolve. So there's the $71 trillion of their entire economy of misery that they have farmed. And then there's also everything in their emotions that they need to resolve. They have a lot to learn. They harm and farm humans. Oh, so they have a backlog of things they need to resolve. They harm and farm humans in order to get negative emotional energy. Their behavior is unacceptable. Levels of cause and effect, cosmic law. Here's the cosmic law. Cause and effect. The cosmos is an incredibly loving place. Cosmic law means what you send out is going to come back to you. If the cosmos is a seamless continuum that gives you an immediate feedback on what you send out, the lessons are clear and immediate. And that is similar to dog training. That's like if your dog makes a mess or does something wrong, you correct them right away. Say N-O, you're not allowed to do that. And then, they learn. But if there is a time lag, like if you tell them a week later, like don't do that thing or don't poop over here, then they will not learn their lesson because they literally do not know that your punishment is connected to their activity. So a direct feedback loop allows for the actions that are negative and harmful to be corrected right away. But when there is a diminishment and what would we call it, a delay, then those negative beings never get the immediate feedback. One of the reasons why there's so much iniquity in Earth society and that everything that's going on here up until this point has been very unfair. How can these archons or lower vibrational yet higher dimensional creatures exist? How can they be in a position of power or influence? Essentially, it is through the time delay. Kick that can down the road of any types of negative repercussions of what they've been experiencing. So essentially all of our planets in the solar system are emanations of the personality characteristics of the sun and the stars and the giant galactic central black hole. Some planets are like children throwing a tantrum. Mars, I'm talking to you. Wah, I'm upset. I'm unhappy. I'm going to invade you. I'm going to make your life hard. And that is Mars coming into Earth's planetary genome. And then another level of evolution that needs to happen is the planet that is victimized or harmed. And that, victim is in quotes there, but that you can't just be a passive victim. The planet absolutely has to mount a defense and has to eject these things that aren't supposed to be here because that is not a balanced, I just have to hug my dog over here. It is not a balanced approach to just be like, some mean planet threw a tantrum and invaded me and I'm just going to sit here and let this happen. And that is also not Christ-like behavior. Just to be very, very clear. That is not in any way part of the cosmic Christ to be a victim, but it is very much when you are a cosmic Christ, you are enforcing cosmic law, which is the sense of what you comes back to you. That state of divinity that we are being refined towards is like having a lean physique or healthy ego that has a minimum of blocked emotions and has access to all of the energy that flows around it. That's this. That's the time field being healthy. No blockades, no fatty deposits, no pooties hanging out in the interstices, cooking their hot dogs in homeless encampments. And heaven, let's talk about heaven. But before that, this is important stuff. The personality characteristics that are being refined, paring away of fatty deposits of the cosmos, we come to the conclusion that on a true level, who we are, definition of identity, is true love, pure love. You are a being of pure love and nothing else. Those putis and their negative, distorted, gross, scuttling personality characteristics are not you. That's not the real you. Anything else is a distortion, a perturbation in the field, like light moving through pebbled glass, light that is being distorted on its path. Lower vibrational emotions are light distorted on its path. Instead of those arrows coming off from the sun and the stars going in direct directions, light that is being distorted and bounced around or stopped. Let's talk about heaven. I spent so many minutes talking about hell, and I have minimal time to talk about heaven. This always happens. But heaven is another word that is mythologized and used to define or describe with emotional language a place that is very real, in the same way that the interstices are analogous to hell and are populated by demons. Heaven is the central core timeline. The central core timeline, the Ascension timeline that goes up and down this way. It is your essential truthful persona, going infinitely in both directions, so up and down, both where you are coming from and where you are going to. It is the perfect tone of endlessness, frictionless movement of energy on its journey, and has no entropy or energy loss. That is what infinity is. That is what love is. This is who you are, energy flowing endlessly on your journey. As opposed to the interstices, this is who you are not. That's energy stuck on your journey, preventing the proper flow of all of the rest of these personality characteristics from going where they need to go. Big question, how is this energy resolved? First, fully identify with the core persona, the pure love being that you are, the Ascension timeline, you as an ascended master. So when you love and accept the beings that are stuck on the interstices, and you do not expect them to be anything other than what they are. That is what love is. Again, not kumbaya, not hug a demon. All of this is acceptance of who they are. So it's like, yeah, you are bloodthirsty rapists and murderers. You've made horrible, horrible life choices and are doing anything you possibly can to avoid responsibility. That's who you are. I accept you for who you are. Remember, love does not mean, all these things. They are analogous to Gollum or these scuttling crabs that I've been talking about. This is what I was looking for. This description: twisted, decrepit, distorted versions of beings who were once vibrant light beings, but they no longer have the capacity to eat love, and they've become twisted, horrible creatures. That is the description that is directly from my teaching and that I was trying to get to before. It's all the way down in my notes. The best thing you can do for these creatures is to send them back to the central sun for processing, back to the great source of consciousness that they came from, so that they no longer occupy the interstices. But again, I reiterate, not enough gas in the car to be able to get them back to light. You send them to entropy, which means taking energy away from them, not giving energy to them. The most loving thing you can do for them is to send them into a state of non-being. And a state of non-being, by contrast, is not the same as simply being in existence, but having no rotten hot dogs to eat, which is a very uncomfortable state to be in. Although they are well installed and have created a ponderous system of organized presence in the interstices, they actually go back to central consciousness via the doorway called entropy, since there is literally not enough energy to send them back to the speed of light. They've been there a long time, but that doesn't mean that this is where they are supposed to stay. The flowing membrane of death is a flowing membrane of death. It's supposed to flow. It's supposed to go. Consciousness is being refined. The consciousness in these beings needs to be refined. It needs to circulate and go back to the central sun, go to the source, and to learn and comprehend all of this holistic whole context, understanding why perpetrators are evil and why innocents are victims. They need to basically come to comprehend and understand the contextual reality of their behavior and go to entropy. That's it. These are disturbances and perturbations and unhealthy versions of reality that you do not want to sustain. So you don't want to give them light. You don't want to give them energy. You don't want to feed them rotten hot dogs. You actually want to remove all energy from them. And in that sense, that is the most just and merciful thing that you can do in response to them. So you don't have to talk to them, give to them, when I say like commune with them, hug them. And in doing shadow work, people are often like, I identify with you. You're me, I'm you. I'm like, no, I don't really want you to do that. What I want you to do is make a very clear boundary of who you are and whom you are not, and then be able to make a distinction of where your energy goes and where you don't want your energy to go, because you don't want to actually feed into realities that are not healthy realities. You don't want to sustain those realities. This is the problem and the difficulty of like having a distorted third eye and people being cut off from divinity, because when you're reconnected to your divinity, all of these words don't matter. You're like, oh, I totally get it. I know exactly who's me and who's not me, and where do I want to spend my money, where do I not want to spend my money, and who deserves energy and interaction and companionship and who does not. Remember, love, tone, equal giving and receiving. That is what my Aurora Collective is all about. We float around as a giant bubble of love, tone, giving and receiving to each other. We do not give to the occupiers and the interstices. And I don't want you to either. No one's going to give to them anymore. No chicken coops, no humaneros, no energy being siphoned off anymore. But what does that mean for them? Wah? Like, wah, I cry. What am I going to do? I'm going to be upset. No, they go to entropy. That's actually the best thing that can happen for them. And that these are beings who need to get schooled in the vernacular themselves. They need to come to their own inner realizations, stop being undigested particles of consciousness, and recognize that they need to be digested and resolved and go to entropy, which is a restful state. They need to go to rest and not be active or motivated or volitional anymore. Planetary ascension is all about the transformation of the planet and of you as a cell on that planet. And what does it actually look like to be clearing out this energy and ascending and changing? Doing a lot of emotional release. People call this stuff shadow work, but I want to be really, really clear, because when I recorded this, it was 10 years ago. Now, shadow work is the latest psyop, because you have to make sure that what you're doing is actually shadow work and not dealing with false projections and illusions, because there's this whole world of synthetic telepathy where things are projected into your mind that are not actually your mind. And then you're like, oh, that's me. I have something to learn from that. Like if you're part of this, desire to learn and grow and level up. However, you can be artificially, wrongly identifying with something as if it is you when it's not really you. And then you have internalized something that is actually an illusion or a false projection. So let's use as an example something like that. I'm not at all like, whatever, like you eat puppies and kittens. And I'm like, yes, I eat puppies and kittens, and I have to own that and claim it and heal myself of it. It's like, no, I've never eaten puppies and kittens in my whole life. That's not me. That's that guy over there. That's not my shadow work. That's not my thing to claim and to heal from. So you have to understand that in this world right now of 5G, synthetic telepathy, for artificial reality overlays, augmented reality, things being beamed and broadcast into human minds that don't belong there, it is very, very easy to take someone who is fragile and be like, oh yeah, you ate puppies and kittens, you're gonna have to own that and claim that in order to ascend, go on your planetary adventure. And then they won't let you go, or won't, like blah, 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 keep on hurting you until you're like, okay, I ate the puppies and the kittens, will you let me go now? It's like a coerced confession under torture. It's totally invalid. It's not valid work. So yeah, all about shadow work. I am now finally, thank you, I know I went way over time, but I'm now finally getting into the chats of what was said. This is from way back earlier in the presentation. Trish said, 2 versions of each one of us relating to quantum entanglement. Exactly. Every single particle that's in you that's made of light has 2 versions of self, one of which stayed with your light parent and one of which was emitted into time and the reality presence that you presently experience. And then she was talking about dancing faster in the sun. I don't know if the one with the pinky that's in the sun is dancing faster than the one that's out here. I would say that they have an analogous dance, but that they're doing it in 2 different places in time. So like I'm wiggling over here and I'm wiggling over here, and the sun can tell, oh, you're both wiggling. Something is happening. Because this is how the sun is actually being able to perceive what is going on with us, even as there are these putis blocking up true communication in the interstices, making it so that we can't really communicate the way that we should as pure light eaters, as pure light. We are returning to those levels of being able to communicate in pure light, but we're not there yet. But through quantum entanglement, these connections remain that are on the level of pure light. That means heaven knows exactly what is happening to you, and heaven cares. Heaven is literally the stars, the world of pure light. Heaven is not the Christian heaven, a place with golden gates and people with long flowing gowns. And again, doing the backstroke, eating a strawberry, something like that. It's a world of pure love and light transmission with no loss of signal in a completely frictionless entropy world. That is where I come from as a neurological signal on a giant great brain. Lucy says, I keep coming in and out, and you're hitting a lot of nails on the head. This is a really, really deep, profound teaching today. I'm happy I didn't skip over lesson 10. It's really worth delving into. She says, one question before we end from drawing class. Oh, the yellow placement is giving me problems. I will send you a specific thing. Thank you. I got your email about that. I will send you a specific thing so that you can see where yellow goes in order to be able to build this holistic whole of how the chakras are built together. So thank you for that reminder, because I recognized last week's class, I had clear circle templates on a white background, and it was hard for some people to be able to see where circles go, how they fit together. So next time I do that teaching, I will do it with a different type of camera setup. Thank you for your understanding that the camera setup was not perfect. How about any questions or comments or discussion about today's presentation, all about planetary ascension, the accumulated pain signals of the interstices, and clearing out what this is. I mean, I recorded these lessons literally in 2013, 2014. This is what we are experiencing right now, today, like not next week, today. And this is going on, and we are going places in terms of this level of transcendence. Any questions, comments, or anything that you guys would like to share or know about? And if not, that's okay. I will end the recording with them. We always have interesting sharings after the recording. So I will say thank you. I'm profoundly grateful to be able to do this class, connect with you all on this level, the people that are here in person and the people that catch the archives later. And please share my work widely. I think that it is really essential to be able to have this information go out there, have this discussion ongoing, and have people to be, oh, Lucy, you got a little something to say?
Yes. Hello from Paul McMahon. Paul,
Oh,
say hello.
Goodness, Paul.
Hey.
See you.
Hi, can you see Paul?
How you doing?
Beautiful. Love received and sending love back to you.
I share your
you.
class with all the people in and out all the
I'm
time.
so pleased to hear that, and really, really good to connect with I wouldn't call you an old friend. I would call you a long-term friend from way back in Woodstock.
Yes, long-term friend.
Beautiful to see you and talk with you and hear your voice.
Wonderful to see you too.
Thank
And
you.
how's the flying rainbow
Lasagna,
lasagna? Or
The
is it
flying- The
not
fly-
tortellini.
Yes. The flying pasta continues to fly and continues to oscillate and transform, and is heading in amazing directions. And we continue to get more and more momentum as we are moving towards energy. And this is really about release of ballast, releasing all of the emotional blockages and things that have been undigested in each one of us and undigested in our planetary experience and undigested as a society. So everybody who's been doing their trauma release, ancestral trauma release, positive, valid shadow work or healing of your traumas, all of that, you are all literally helping this planetary ascension, because it's like a hot air balloon. You release the sandbags, you release the emotional ballast, and everything rises higher. And I know that people are feeling that rising higher feeling. I know that people are feeling what that moment feels like and heading more towards ascension. And then don't be put off. Like sometimes I also, like I said, struggle a lot because there's a lot of resistance. The Pooties are like, no, like heal me. You know what I mean? Like, wah, tantrum, like I'm here, do something about me. So you have to understand that is all part of this resolution of duality.
Yes. Wait, give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Resolving duality and being able to come into a world that is beyond duality, beyond good versus evil, beyond victim versus perpetrator, beyond invaders, like the invaders that came to our planet. Everything is getting resolved. Things that were invaded on our planet, an uncountable amount of time ago, destructions in our galaxy, an uncountable amount of time ago. All of this is being resolved literally right now in the experience of our daily day-to-day experience over these weeks and these days that we're going through. So just know and understand and be profoundly loving and compassionate towards yourself and others. It is one of the most difficult, fraught, intense emotional times that you can go through, and that even something that might seem like a very small challenge, like I joke about parking tickets. Dealing with parking tickets, or whatever is your version of that, can be a magnificent, heroic challenge in the context of all the other emotional transformation that we are doing. We are truly on a soul pilgrimage and moving into an amazing new state of being, and that this is done as a journey together, not as just one singular person doing this, but that we really are all fractal reflection fragments of the whole, moving along doing this, including like my beautiful little dog back here, and anyone else that you love and care about in your life. All of these organisms in this planet, the entire planet, entire ecosystem, and every parallel dimension and every petri dish out there, every science experiment out there, it's all getting resolved. So very, very big stuff is happening right now. I think I'm going to end the recording for right now, even though I know our conversation probably continues onward. So thank you very much for everyone who's able to be here and everyone who catches the archive. And yes, my profound gratitude and recognition go out to you. And please be strong and continue going on your journey.